Chapter 21:11. Looking at the sect elder who was still trying his best to quibble. Yi Qingluo's face was still calm. Her lips curled into a faint smile. That calm look. It formed a sharp contrast with the exasperated sect elder. Yi Qingluo tilted her head and smiled faintly. Sect elder, don't you think that the excuse of jealousy is too far-fetched? All the guests here can see clearly that I, Yi Qingluo, have never thought of inheriting Three Springs sect. From the beginning to the end. Today's succession ceremony was single-handedly created by me for little you. You were obviously exposed on the spot that you are not a descendant of the Yi family. That's why 8th young master came to replace you. The sect elder roared. Yi Qingluo snorted coldly. If I want to be the patriarch of Three Springs sect, why should I not wear the attire specially made for me? Why would little you wear the attire of Three Springs sect and appear here? After a pause, she asked. Or does the sect elder think that I have the ability to predict the future? You. The sect elder was speechless as he stared at Yi Qingluo with a steely expression. Yi Qingluo placed one hand on his shoulder. Her slender body only reached Yi Fingyu's shoulders. However, her aura was extremely powerful. She squinted her eyes. That sinister smile on her lips was extremely treacherous. What? Could it be that the sect elder is really going to insist that I can predict the future? The minute Yi Qingluo said that, everyone present couldn't help but burst out laughing. Yes, Yi Qingluo's words were reasonable. She didn't wear the attire specially made by the old Grand Master. Obviously, she had no intention to inherit the position of patriarch. From the beginning to the end, she had been planning for her brother. In comparison, it was obvious that the sect elder wanted to control the Three Springs sect. It was obvious that he was an ambitious elder of the sect. You two siblings deliberately colluded. Who doesn't know that 8th young master only listens to you? What's the difference between him and you being the patriarch? The sect elder stubbornly refused to let Yi Qingluo go. He's only 15. He's not old enough to be crowned, and he's not qualified to inherit the position of the sect leader. The sect elders racked their brains and finally grasped the most important point in the rules of inheriting the position of the sect master. A complacent smile appeared on his face. If you were a descendant of the Yi clan, it would be logical for you to inherit the position of the clan leader when the clan leader died in an accident. But when the previous sect leader was alive, he had no intention of nurturing the 8th young master. If he inherits the position at this age, I'm afraid the future of the Three Springs sect. He stopped talking. However, everyone understood what he meant by the words he didn't finish. The old ancestor's expression also became solemn. The sect elder stroked his white flowery beard and looked at Yi Qingluo complacently. According to the rules of succession, before Yi Fengyu reaches the age of 20, he has no right to inherit the position of sect master. He thought that after extinguishing all of Yi Qingluo's hopes, Yi Qingluo would definitely be flustered. But looking at Yi Qingluo for some time, the corners of Yi Qingluo's lips curled into a strange sneer. The sect elder's heart trembled. Could it be that Yi Qingluo still had some tricks up her sleeves? Yi Qingluo placed her hands on Yi Fengyu's shoulders and pushed him towards the direction of the crowd. The Three Springs sect might disappear from this world. Otherwise, how could the descendants of this generation have lost the mark of the Divine Emperor? When she saw the Divine Emperor's mark on Yi Fengyu's forehead, the old ancestor's heart was finally at ease. The person who has the Divine Emperor's mark is the successor chosen by the Divine Emperor himself. Old 8 is qualified. He is the most qualified to become. I don't believe it. Before the old ancestor could finish her words, she was interrupted by the sect elder's exasperated roar. Yi Qingluo, I have the right to suspect that you want 8th young master to become the patriarch and deliberately use the matter of the Divine Emperor's imprint to deceive me. Chapter 21:13. The sect elder's behavior aroused the disgust of the crowd. Anyone could see the sect elder's ambition for the Three Springs sect at this moment. Under the leadership of the representatives of several forces, someone raised his arm and shouted, Yi Fengyu, the sect leader of the Three Springs sect. Yi Fengyu, the sect leader of the Three Springs sect. Yi Fengyu, the sect leader of the Three Springs sect. The orderly shouts were deafening. The sect elder's face turned ashen. He clenched his fists, feeling that he had no real power. He only had the title of sect elder. He could not stand in the Three Springs sect at all. He had not appeared for a few decades. These juniors dared to not give him face. Even the elder ancestor and Yi Tianquang had once respectfully knelt at his feet. Now they dared to question him. That was why he had no power. If he had real power, he could control the life and death of the Three Springs sect. How would the elder ancestor and the juniors of the Three Springs sect dare to treat him like this? The more the sect elder thought about it, the more unbalanced he felt. His face darkened. He reached out and pressed the red pattern on Yi Fingyu's forehead. He did not believe that the Divine Emperor's mark was real. It should be known that those who had the Divine Emperor's mark would have the mark appear on their forehead every new day. Their entire body would be cleansed by the power of the mark. Yi Fengyu had been in the Yi clan for 15 years. If Yi Fengyu had the Divine Emperor's mark, how could the Yi clan not have discovered its existence after so many years? This mark was a great honor for the descendants of the Yi clan. Would Yi Fengyu hide it from the Yi clan when he discovered that he had the mark? So, Yi Fengyu's mark was definitely fake. However, when the sect elder's hand touched the mark on Yi Fengyu's forehead, suddenly, a red light flowed out of Yi Fengyu's forehead and gathered in the center of his forehead. Whoosh! The red light turned into a sword of light and flew toward the sect elder's outstretched hand. Ah! The sect elder let out a blood-curdling scream as he was flung away by the red light and landed heavily on the ground. Then, the sect elder's face turned deathly pale as he struggled to crawl up from the ground. He knelt in Yi Fengyu's direction and begged, Sect leader, please spare my life. This subordinate was blinded by greed and deserves to die 10,000 times. As soon as he said this, he completely admitted it. The mark on Yi Fengyu's forehead. It was the mark of the Divine Emperor. Yi Fengyu was personally appointed by the Divine Emperor to be the leader of the Three Springs faction. If Yi Fengyu didn't have the qualifications to be the sovereign of the Three Springs sect, no one in the Yi clan had the right to do so. Immediately, the various forces stood up and began to congratulate him. Congratulations on inheriting the Three Springs sect leader. Even the luxurious garden had been razed to the ground, even if the succession ceremony was drenched in blood. However, it still couldn't suppress the joy that came from the bottom of everyone's heart. Without the interference of the sect's elders, the succession ceremony was extremely smooth. The sect elder appeared to be trembling with fear, as if he was afraid that Yi Fengyu would act on a whim and use him as an example. If it was in the past, the position of the sect elder could be said to be on the same level as the sect leader. Although he had no real power, the sect leader still had to give him face and seek his opinion on everything. But this time, the sect leader was a difficult character to deal with. Behind him was an even more difficult and extremely arrogant and despotic Yi Qingluo. If these two juniors wanted to mess with him, they would absolutely not show any mercy. Chapter 21:14. After the succession ceremony ended, news of what had happened at the succession ceremony quickly spread. The mystery of Yi Qingluo's birth was also spread like wildfire. Some people were guessing who Yi Qingluo's biological father was. But there were also people who hated Yi Qingluo and started to ridicule her for not being a noble Yi family member, and ridiculed her mother. But Yi Qingluo didn't bother about these. On the night when the succession ceremony ended, Yi Qingluo went to Bei Ming's room. In Bei Ming's room, she found the item that she used to exchange for Yi Fengru's life. In the secret compartment, there was a well-kept wooden box. She could tell that Bei Ming often cleaned this box and was very attentive in taking care of it. Before she opened the box, Old Man Song's surprised voice rang in Yi Qingluo's mind. Lass! Inside. There is a very familiar and strong presence inside. Yi Qingluo's hand, which was holding the wooden box, paused. Very familiar? Yes, I definitely felt this presence somewhere before. But now I can't remember. Old Man Song's spirit body came out from the azure dew bracelet. Old Man Song circled around the wooden box a few times. Lass, this thing. If it really has something to do with your biological father, I'm afraid. Your future days will not be peaceful. Something that could make Old Man Song produce such a strong reaction. Yi Qingluo had a rough guess in her heart. Hearing Old Man Song's words, Yi Qingluo's fingers tightened. I know this body of mine, no matter if it's innate talent or profound jade heart. It's obviously different from ordinary people. Plus, she crossed over to this other world, contracted the Azure Dew bracelet, received Old Man Song's guidance. All showed that her background was extraordinary. It could be said that from the moment she found out that her profound jade heart was the one and only divine phoenix profound jade heart in the world. Yi Qingluo already had some suspicions. She wasn't a member of the Yi family. But today she heard Old Grand Madam and the rest personally said it. In other words, it confirmed her guess. Old Man Song, don't worry, I'm not an impulsive person. Yi Qingluo held the wooden box tightly. Even if I know the truth, I won't immediately search for my background. I won't act rashly before I'm strong enough to protect myself and the people around me. Yi Qingluo's eyes drooped as she gazed at the wooden box in her palm. Then he put the wooden box into the profound phoenix ring. Today's matter will definitely spread like wildfire. Many people will speculate about my background. I think I should wait until you feel that I'm strong enough before I take a look at it. The ancients often said that a tall tree attracts the wind. More and more people were paying attention to Yi Qingluo. This would make more and more people start to suspect Yi Qingluo. Previously there was Three Springs sect as a smokescreen, in addition to Dmo Xian's reputation, suppressing the reason of Yi Qingluo's outstanding innate talent. But the news that Yi Qingluo was not a descendant of the Three Springs sect spread out. Yi Qingluo's innate talent was bound to be speculated by those with ulterior motives. As soon as Old Man Song touched the wooden box, he sensed the powerful aura inside. If someone were to find out, it would definitely be disadvantageous to Yi Qingluo. Placing the wooden box into the profound phoenix ring would conceal the box's aura. It's naturally the best that you can think this way. Old Man Song also heaved a sigh of relief. This old man was still thinking about how to persuade you to dispel the idea of searching for your background. Chapter 21:15. Old Man Song's eyes were filled with pity as he looked at the calm young lady. His heart was filled with heartache for her, and also filled with pride. She was indeed the young lady whom he fancied. She was able to maintain her calmness at any moment. A child with such a calm temperament, who remained unfazed in the face of danger. In future she would definitely surpass his imagination. Old Man Song silently swore in his heart. As long as he was still able to exist in this world, he would protect this child. Yi Qingluo didn't know what Old Man Song was thinking about. After she kept the wooden box into the profound phoenix ring, she felt a strong force rushing into her blood vessels. It was only for a moment, and it was suppressed by the profound phoenix ring. But that feeling, although it was only for a moment, Yi Qingluo still remembered that feeling. And she was even more certain that sealing this thing in the profound phoenix ring was the right choice. On a faraway mountain which was enshrouded in celestial qi, in front of a huge towering tree, one black and one white, were playing chess. Dong! The sound of chess pieces falling onto the chessboard was heard. That tall and straight man who was shrouded in a cloak, his fingers were stiff, still maintaining the posture of holding a chess piece. Opposite the cloaked man was a handsome gentleman in a white robe. The handsome gentleman looked at the cloaked man's black chess piece on the chessboard and smiled. What happened? You can't even hold the chess pieces properly. The cloaked man's stiff fingers on the chessboard curled up one by one. The plan has been disrupted. There's actually someone who can disrupt your plan? Could it be that woman? The handsome gentleman raised his brows in interest. The cloaked man's fingers clenched tightly. Under the cloak, that pair of treacherous cold eyes shot out a chilling intent. That slut actually left that thing in the lower realm. That thing. If it sees the light of day again, the people in the god realm will definitely find out about Yi Qingluo's whereabouts. Yi Qingluo? The handsome gentleman murmured this name. His smile became more and more playful. Is that the vessel that you keep? The cloaked man didn't reply. He suddenly slammed the chessboard and stood up. In a blink of an eye, The cloaked man had already disappeared from the top of the mountain. The handsome gentleman held on to a faint smile. His mouth muttered these 3 words. Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo. Nirvana Realm 3 Springs Sect. Yiqing Luo just came out from the Baiming clan's room. He saw Yi Fengyu walking toward him. When he saw Yiqing Luo, his eyes shone brightly as he took a quick step forward. Sister, how is it? Do you know who your father is? It doesn't matter who my father is. Looking at his worried eyes, Yiqing Luo smiled lightly. No matter who it is, I will always be your sister. You. Of course you are my sister. Yi Fengyu held Yiqing Luo's wrist tightly. Our mothers are from the same mother. We have the same blood flowing in our veins. You are my biological sister. Yiqing Luo laughed lowly, raised her hand and rubbed the boy who was a head taller than her. Silly Xiaoyu. Don't you believe in your own mother? Mother is such a good woman. How could she betray Yi Tianquang, betray the path of women? Yi Fengyu's expression stiffened. The hand which was grabbing Yiqing Luo's wrist also paused for a moment. Yiqing Luo's words, of course he had thought about it. In his memory, although his mother didn't like his father, but she would absolutely not do anything that violated the path of women. But old Grandmadam personally admitted it. He and his sister were born from the same blood, but they were not biological siblings. But indeed, they were born from the same mother. In Yi Fengyu's heart, he was still unwilling to believe that his mother would betray his father. Chapter 21:16. Yiqing Luo rubbed her brother's head hard. Silly Xiaoyu, even if we don't have the same blood flowing in our bodies, we are still biological siblings. You will always be my younger brother. These ancient people did not know. As someone from the 21st century, how could she not understand this common sense? If her mother really was pregnant with her before Yi Tianquang returned to the mansion, after that it would be impossible for her to get pregnant with Yi Fengyu. Between her and Yi Fengyu, there must be a child who wasn't her mother's biological child. Yi Fengyu was a descendant of the Yi family. That also meant that she wasn't born from her mother. As for why it turned out to be her and Yi Fengyu's twin, perhaps only mother would know the secret behind it. Sister. After listening to Yiqing Luo's words, Yi Fengyu's eyes became misty. Yes, I will always be your brother. Yes, no matter what the truth was. The sibling relationship between him and his sister was real, and that was enough. That's right, big sister, the old ancestor said. She has something to talk to you about. She's waiting for you in the hall. Yi Fengyu suddenly recalled the reason why he came to look for Yiqing Luo and lowered his voice. Elder sister, old Grandmadam is getting on in years and everything she has done, although it's very unfair to you, but it's all for the sake of the Yi family. If it's possible, can elder sister not blame old Grandmadam? Yi Fengyu knew that his request to Yiqing Luo was too much. He had seen everything that old Grandmadam had done to Yiqing Luo in the past, and that had aroused his anger. However, when he thought of the scene that the old ancestor had just witnessed, in the end, Yi Fengyu's heart softened. After all, this was his grandmother. It was his biological grandmother. I'm not asking you to tolerate her. After saying that, Yi Fengyu hurriedly added, I just wanted to say if the old ancestor didn't target you, could big sister. I understand. Yiqing Luo patted Yi Fengyu's shoulder, looking at his frightened look. She couldn't help but pull his face. I'm not a man-eating tiger. If she doesn't provoke me, I naturally won't intentionally provoke her. Moreover, I still want to ask her about the details of what happened back then. Yi Fengyu immediately beamed with joy. He knew that his sister would do what she promised him. He absolutely believed that the elder ancestor would no longer target his sister. The Three Springs sect and the Yi clan were either dead or crippled. He only had his ancestor and his sister as his relatives. She followed Yi Fengyu into the hall one after the other. There was only one person sitting in the hall. It was just the old ancestor alone. Yiqing Luo squinted at old Grandmadam, and saw that on her aged face, her eyes were slightly red. Apparently she had cried earlier. Yiqing Luo could faintly guess what old Grandmadam wanted her to discuss about. It seemed that the two of them had reached a consensus. He wanted to talk about what had happened in the past. This was good as well. If their goals were the same, at least they wouldn't have a falling out, and Yi Fengyu would be stuck in the middle. Yi Qingluo walked into the main hall and sat down on the soft chair on old Grand Madam's right-hand side. Seeing Yi Qingluo, old Grand Madam hinted with her eyes. Yi Fengyu immediately walked to the door, and with a wave of his perception, he closed the door of the hall. Old Grand Madam stood up and her hand which was holding onto the walking stick trembled slightly. Old 7, today it's all thanks to... Yi Qingluo raised her hand and interrupted old Grand Madam's words. Chapter 21:17. The old ancestor's face stiffened. Seeing this, Yi Fengyu was worried that the atmosphere would become stiff, so he immediately smiled and tried to smooth things over. Ancestor, elder sister is just worried about your health. So many things have happened today, ancestor must be tired. Elder sister just wants to finish talking so that you can rest. Old Grand Madam stared at Yi Qingluo without blinking. His sinister and treacherous eyes were shrouded in a complicated and incomprehensible light. She gradually loosened her grip on her walking stick. After a long while, she let out a heavy sigh and fell back into her seat. Old 7th, I know you are blaming me. Elder ancestor closed her eyes weakly. If I had known that you had no interest in Three Springs sect, I wouldn't have said such a thing in public. To spread the news that Yi Qingluo wasn't a descendant of the Yi family. It wasn't only Yi Qingluo's reputation that was ruined. It wasn't only the reputation of Yi Fengyu's mother. It was also the reputation of the entire Three Springs sect. After all, Yi Fengyu's mother had been dead for almost 10 years. She was also carrying the title of the mistress of the Yi family, Madame Yi. When Madame Yi was alive, she secretly had an affair with a mysterious man and gave birth to a baby girl. This made Three Springs sect become the laughingstock of the Nirvana realm. Moreover, old Grand Madam wanted to make use of Yi Qingluo's current status in the Nirvana realm to boost Three Springs sect's prestige. This idea was no longer feasible now. Since the matter has already happened, no matter how much you repent, you will not be able to erase what you have done. Yi Qingluo's words were impolite, but her tone was extremely calm. Her tone was very calm. Ancestor, I'm sure you know why I came here. There's no need to say anything else. Just tell me the details of what happened back then. The elder ancestor's facial muscles trembled. His shriveled lips moved as if he wanted to say something. But when he met Yi Qingluo's calm and clear eyes, all the words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat. Old Madam was deeply aware that she had let Yi Qingluo down. If it wasn't for Yi Qingluo, Three Springs sect would not only fall into the hands of an outer sect elder, more importantly, the Three Springs sect might really fall because of this. And she would personally destroy the eighth brother who was recognized by the Divine Emperor. Towards Yi Qingluo's attitude, the old ancestor didn't say anything in the end. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. He then looked towards Yi Qingluo, as he told her everything that he knew back then, in full detail. Things were roughly the same as what he had learned during the succession ceremony. Old Grand Madam then told Yi Qingluo in detail what had happened. Yi Tianquang had been working in other continents for several months, and hadn't returned to the Three Springs sect. At that time, the Three Springs sect was managed by the elder ancestor. One day, when Madame Yuchi was accompanying her ancestor for a stroll in the garden, she found Madame Yi acting mysteriously in the rockery in the garden. Madame Yi was obviously more flustered after being exposed by the great ancestor. Under Madame Yuchi's vague guidance, the grand elder ancestor thought of the words cheating on a man. However, after a thorough investigation, the elder ancestor did not find any traces of other men in the rockery, although this matter was left unsettled. However, a seed of doubt was planted in the heart of the old ancestor. Naturally, he began to pay more attention to Madame Yi. The more he paid attention, the more he felt that Madame Yi was hiding a huge secret. The more he paid attention, the more he felt that Madame Yi was hiding a huge secret. Chapter 21:18. Until 2 months before Yi Tianquang was about to return to the Western continent, the elder ancestor discovered that Madame Ye's body was getting weaker and weaker, and she was retching from time to time. At first, he was able to appear at the family dinner at noon. However, after a long time, Madame Yi seemed to smell the delicacies on the table and began to vomit. In the end, he could only hide in his own courtyard, unable to go out. Madame Yuqi unintentionally mentioned that this was the same as when she was pregnant with Yi Qingqian and Yi Qingling. The Grand Elder, who had suspected that Madame Yi was having an affair, immediately felt that Madame Yi was pregnant with another man's child. The more the old ancestor thought about it, the more he felt that his guess was correct. However, Madame Yi's methods were too brilliant. Even if a doctor came, there was no way to accurately diagnose that Madame Yi was pregnant. But the more he couldn't find anything, the more he couldn't. The Grand Elder became even more suspicious. Elder Ancestor thought that when Madame Yi's belly became bigger, nothing could be hidden anymore. Thus, after waiting for 2 months, Yi Tianquang returned to the Three Springs sect. During this period of time, Old Ancestor had been keeping an eye on Madame Yi, but he didn't find anything that could be used against her. She didn't see Madame Yi's belly getting bigger. After Yi Tianquang returned, the Old Ancestor wanted to find an opportunity to talk about this matter with his son, who knew that before she could find her son, he heard his son going to Madame Yi's courtyard. He didn't leave the courtyard until the afternoon of the second day. This infuriated the concubines of the other 2 branches. Madame Yuqi was especially enraged and immediately ran to the Elder Ancestor to fan the flames. The Old Ancestor had originally been suspicious of Madame Yi. When he heard that his own son had actually stayed in Madame Yi's courtyard for a whole day, he couldn't help but secretly curse Madame Yi as a vixen. While dragging his own son, he told Yi Tianquang his own guess. Yi Tianquang didn't really care. He knew very well whether his woman was pregnant or not. However, the Grand Elder insisted that Madame Yi was having an affair and that she was pregnant with a bastard. Yi Tianquang was helpless. He could only tell the Old Ancestor why he had come to Madame Yi's courtyard. After that, the Old Ancestor no longer asked about this matter. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Then came the news that Madame Yi was pregnant. The more the Old Ancestor thought about it, the more she felt that Madame Yi had schemed everything. She wanted to give Yi Tianquang the child she had slept with another man. However, Yi Tianquang had already specifically warned them. He stopped her from acting rashly. The Old Ancestor could only endure it. Sure enough, Madame Yi gave birth prematurely in less than 8 months of pregnancy. This time, there was no need for Madame Yuqi to sow discord. The Old Ancestor couldn't believe Madame Yi. But after Yi Qingluo was born, however, news came that Yi Fengyu was in a critical condition and was on the verge of death. This news made the Grand Elder, who wanted to find Madame Yi to test her blood to prove her innocence, confused. Adultery and pregnancy were all her guesses. She couldn't find any evidence. Furthermore, Yi Tianquang had spent the night in Madame Yi's courtyard after returning, so he was very certain that Madame Yi wasn't pregnant. It was highly possible that the child would really be the legitimate son of the Yi family. If he didn't save them, what should they do after harming the legitimate son of the Yi clan? Especially since the Divine Emperor's mark had yet to appear on the other young masters and ladies. Then, after much consideration, the Elder Ancestor decided to use the forbidden technique to save the son of the Yi clan. Chapter 2119. These are all that this old one knows. Everything that has happened. Recalling the past events, old Grandmadame's eyes were already hazy. Yi Fengyu took the soft silk handkerchief by the side and wiped old Grandmadame's eyes. It's all in the past, old Grandmadame. No matter if my sister is my biological sister or not, in my heart, she is my biological sister. His voice was very soft. However, the force in his words was sonorous and forceful, leaving no room for doubt. The great ancestor lightly patted the back of Yi Fengyu's hand, moved his hand away, and lightly sighed. This old one is old. The future is the era of you young people. Now that this old one has seen your divine emperor's mark, I also believe in your ability. Saying that, old Grandmadame raised her head and looked at the young face in front of her, revealing a kind smile that she hadn't shown for a long time. Grandma said before, Grandma will not interfere with your decision. What she meant. Even if Yi Fengyu wanted Three Springs sect to become Yi Qingluo's solid backing in the future, she wouldn't say a word more. Yi Fengyu nodded hard. Grandma, don't worry, I will definitely make Three Springs sect flourish. Old Grandmadam smiled as she looked at Yi Qingluo. Old 7, although grandmother had exposed your background in front of so many people today, but everything that you have done for Three Springs sect, grandmother has seen it all. From today onwards, grandma will not interfere with anything in Three Springs sect. You are still the 7th Missy of Three Springs sect, the number 7 in grandma's heart. I only hope you don't blame grandma, and can help grandma protect number 8. Needless to say, I will also protect little you. Yi Qingluo's tone was still indifferent. What you said earlier, I still have a few questions to ask in detail. Old Grandmadam had long expected that she would still have questions, so she nodded slowly. Ask away. You said, regarding your suspicion of my mother having an affair outside, it was because you and Madame Yuchi saw it together in the garden? Old Grandmadam was stunned and nodded. Yes. Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes. Then after you sensed that my mother's situation was not right, as if she was having an affair, you investigated my mother. At that time, was Madame Yuchi by your side? Yes. When old Madame heard Yi Qingluo's question, her heart faintly seemed to have grasped something. Right, Madame Yuchi. She had always been by my side. The Yuchi clan. Yi Qingluo's slender brows creased slightly as she leaned against the soft chair. This Madame Yuchi hated her mother to the core. Her mother's death. It was definitely related to Madame Yuchi. Back then, mother was suspected by the old ancestor of having an affair with someone else. It must also be a trap set by the Yuchi clan. It was very likely the reason why her mother had chosen to have her and Yi Fengyu be born as a pair of twins. Madame Yuchi might know. She should be glad that she only wanted to make Madame Yuchi's life a living hell, and did not kill her. He even fed Madame Yuchi a pill that would make her unable to breathe. As long as Madame Yuchi was still alive, it was a piece of cake to pry information out of her mouth. Yi Qingluo raised her head and asked again. Then, that year you always suspected that my mother was pregnant with someone else's child. And Yi Tianquang stayed in my mother's courtyard for such a long time. What did Yi Tianquang say to you that made you accept my mother? Old Grandmadam's expression stiffened. Looking at Yi Qingluo's expression, his gaze seemed to be dodging. Chapter 2120. Old Grandmadam's eyes kept dodging, not daring to look at Yi Qingluo's eyes. After Yi Qingluo finished asking these words, the corners of her mouth raised into a bright smile again. Her enchanting eyes were curved, long, and charming. Old Grandmadam, you can choose not to say what happened in the past. Her voice was still as calm as ever, as if nothing could move her in the slightest. Then what you want, I can also choose to turn them all into ashes. Old Grandmadam's dodging eyes stopped. Her old eyes suddenly widened, looking at her in shock, as if she didn't believe her words. What old Grandmadam hoped for was that Three Springs sect could be safe. The current patriarch of Three Springs sect was Yi Fengyu. How could Yi Qingluo be willing to let Yi Fengyu's Three Springs sect be destroyed? You know, little you is very obedient to me. Yi Qingluo smiled, smiling disapprovingly. Without Three Springs sect, I can still give him 4 Springs sect, 5 Springs sect. Her voice paused. Her smile became more and more brilliant. If you don't believe me, you can try. Old Grandmadam's face was completely livid. On her old face, there was a dark cloud. Compared to Yi Qingluo's smiling face, it formed a sharp contrast. Old Grandmadam's fingers clasped tightly on the walking stick. She suppressed the anger in her heart. He kept brainwashing himself in his heart. Today was different from the past. Old Eight's future, the future of Three Springs sect, must be supported by Yi Qingluo. Even for Three Springs sect, for Old Eight. Whatever Yi Qingluo wanted to know, she must tell Yi Qingluo. Old Grandmadam suppressed the anger in her heart, staring at Yi Qingluo, answering word by word. In your mother's hands, there is something that Tianquang wants. Yi Qingluo raised her eyebrows. She had some guesses about this point. If it wasn't for the fact that her mother held something that Yi Tianquang wanted, or some secret. And this thing, it was not only beneficial to Yi Tianquang, it was also beneficial to Three Springs sect. Otherwise, old grandmadam would not be so easily convinced. Otherwise, Yi Tianquang would not exchange the position of young patriarch. Yi Qingluo half squinted her eyes and asked with a smile, "What is it?" "I don't know what it is exactly." Elder ancestor shook her head. Tianquang did not tell me too much about it. He only told me that this thing concerns the future of Three Springs sect. Yi Qingluo raised her eyebrows slightly. Clearly he did not believe it. The old ancestor frowned. "Since I promised you that I would tell you what I know, it is naturally true." "Really?" Yi Qingluo continued to raise her brows and smiled. That smile caused annoyance to rise up in the old ancestor's heart for some reason. Old ancestor leaned on his walking stick and slammed it heavily on the ground. He simply let go and said directly, "Tianquang married your mother because he wanted that thing on her body. But your mother was always on guard against Tianquang. Even after they got married, she didn't hand that thing over to Tianquang. Back then, when Tianquang returned from another continent, he went to your mother's courtyard because your mother used that item to lure him to her courtyard. Old Eighth, it's your mother. She used that item to trade for it." When these words were spoken, not only Yi Qingluo's expression changed. Yi Fengyu's complexion suddenly turned pale. Father married mother, just for one thing? And he was also exchanged for that thing by his mother? Yi Qingluo's heart was also shocked. What was the thing that Yi Tianquang had been thinking about for so long? Even after they got married, her mother didn't give that thing to Yi Tianquang. Chapter 21-21. But why did mother use that thing to beg Yi Tianquang for a child? Could it be that mother had a reason to need a child at that time? Once she thought of her family, they were born from the same family. Yi Qingluo's mind suddenly had a very bold idea. Mother begged Yi Tianquang for a child. Was it for her? This thought made Yi Qingluo's heart suddenly beat extremely fast. She clenched her fingers and asked. Mother wanted a child and Yi Tianquang gave it. But the thing, mother still didn't give it to Yi Tianquang? Because of what happened to you. Old grandmadam closed her eyes. Because you are not of the Yi family's bloodline, Tianquang wanted to kill you. It was your mother who stopped Tianquang and used that thing to threaten him. So, I was able to become the young matriarch for so many years. It was all because my mother used that thing to exchange for it. In this way, all the previous doubts made sense. Old grandmadam nodded. Yes, Tianquang promised your mother that the position of young matriarch will be kept for you until the day you reach marriageable age. As long as you live until then, that thing will automatically return to Tianquang's hands. Live until marriageable age, Yi Qingluo lowered her eyes. This body was 15 years old this year, just reached marriageable age. And she, at this time, because the original owner of this body died, she took over this body. In other words, because this year, this body reached marriageable age. Therefore, Yi Tianquang allowed Yi Qingqian and Yi Qingling to plot to destroy her. Dig out the profound jade heart. Destroy her innocence. Attempt to take her life. Then now that I have reached marriageable age, is that thing already in Yi Tianquang's hands? Yi Qingluo asked. Yi Qingluo couldn't distinguish this problem now. Yi Tianquang should have obtained that thing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have acted against her and let his two daughters use this kind of cruel method to take her life when she was 15 years old. But if Yi Tianquang really obtained that thing he had schemed for most of his life. With Yi Tianquang's temperament, he should have announced it long ago and made everyone know so that everyone would admire him. Moreover, this was equivalent to having something to protect his life. How could he have been killed by Yi Fengru? How could he have been stripped of his position as sect master? No. Old grandmadam looked at Yi Qingluo, and it wasn't hard to tell that in her tone, there was some suppressed anger. This anger was for Madam Yi. Your mother has lied to all of us. From the beginning to the end. She had never thought of handing that thing over to Tianquang. She's just using that thing to fool the Yi family. The old ancestor leaned back in the soft chair. The old voice trembled with anger. There's no such thing. You've reached the marriageable age, but that thing still hasn't appeared. And your mother died a long time ago. She's dead. No one knows where she hid that thing. She was angry, but also upset. Madame Ye's death was caused by her and Madame Yuchi. She let Madame Yi die. It was because he could not bear to see Madame Yi use that thing to threaten Tian Kuang time and again. He was also completely sure that after Yi Qingluo reached the age of 15, she would definitely get that item. But in the end, he didn't expect this kind of ending. Old Grandmadame's old eyes suddenly opened wide. He stared at Yi Qingluo without blinking. Chapter 21-22. Old Grandmadame seemed to have thought of something and suddenly stood up. Her hand that was holding the walking stick tightened and trembled. Her eyes widened and the expression on her face kept changing. Yi Qingluo, you and your mother deliberately teamed up to make fun of the Yi family. No wonder old Grandmadame thought so. Yi Tianquang had never told old Grandmadame what he was after. He only knew that with that thing, Three Springs sect would have the hope to become the leader of the four major sections. That thing was extremely important. Otherwise, Yi Tianquang wouldn't have spent most of his life trying to get that thing from Madame Yi. In the beginning, all the agreement was to wait until Yi Qingluo reached marriageable age. And after Yi Qingluo reached marriageable age, Yi Qingluo had undergone earth-shaking changes. In just a few months' time. From a waste with no ability to cultivate to a sky mystic supremacy. And her whole person seemed to have changed into another person. This was very likely. It was not caused by the Overlord. But, Madame Yi gave that thing to Yi Qingluo. Therefore Yi Qingluo advanced by leaps and bounds. The more she thought so, the more old Grandmadame's heart trembled. She was also more and more determined in her own thoughts. Old Grandmadame. Yi Fengyu was the first to react and hurriedly hugged old Grandmadame's arm. Sister can't be that kind of person. Mother can't be that kind of person either. Although Yi Fengyu was still young when his mother died. But Yi Fengyu remembered very clearly. His mother, for him and his sister, even if she was humiliated in the Yi family, she never made a sound. His mother, even if she wore tattered clothes, lived in a shabby place, suffered from those servants' and other concubines' insults. But his mother was still so noble and elegant, clean and pure, without the slightest bit of resentment. His mother would never go through so much trouble to scheme against his father and the Yi clan. Old Grandmadame's body weight was mostly on Yi Fengyu. Old Grandmadame's eyes flashed with hazy tears. Her voice was so tight that it was hard to spit out from her throat. Yi Qingluo, did your mother give that thing to you? No. Yi Qingluo shook her head and replied calmly. I was only 5 years old when my mother died. No, that's not right. If she didn't give it to you, how could she have let that thing? She gave it to you. The old ancestor shook his head in panic. That item was Yi Tianquang's obsession. Now it had become the obsession of the old ancestor. That item sounds very powerful. If I had obtained that item long ago, I wouldn't have given you the opportunity to bully me for 15 years. Yi Qingluo's voice was still calm, without any fluctuation of emotions. The old ancestor was stunned. His stiff body finally fell back onto the soft chair. Fortunately, Yi Fengyu had been supporting the old ancestor, preventing the old ancestor from falling due to his weak body. For a moment, the entire hall fell into a dead silence. After some time, old Grandmadame slowly opened her eyes and looked at Yi Qingluo tiredly as she sighed heavily. Forget it, forget it. The past matters are all in the past. No matter if that thing had disappeared from this world along with your mother, or if it has already landed in your hands, it has nothing to do with the Yi family. Chapter 21-23. After Yi Fengyu sent old Grandmadame back to the courtyard, Yi Qingluo had already left the main hall. Looking at the empty main hall, his mind recalled the conversation between old Grandmadame and Yi Qingluo earlier. He shut his eyes heavily. He was the child that his mother used that thing to exchange for. What was the purpose of his birth? Numerous thoughts, like fried dough twist, intertwined together in his mind. He almost couldn't breathe as he was entangled. His hands, which were hanging by the side of his body, slowly clenched into fists. The muscles on his entire body, at this moment, formed into distinct lines. Suddenly he opened his eyes. No, he had to ask his sister clearly. Otherwise, his heart would not be at peace. Yiqing Luo was walking quickly towards her own courtyard. From old grandmadame's words, she could almost guess what was the thing that old grandmadame was talking about. But she had to confirm it once. After confirming, she then went over to Madame Yuqi's side. Ask clearly, what secret did Madame Yuqi discovered that year on her mother? Which made Madame Yuqi to make old grandmadame misunderstand that her mother was outside having an illicit relationship. Yiqing Luo had just walked into her own courtyard when Zhang San and Zhang Si suddenly ran over in a fluster. Seventh miss. Bad news. Bad news. Yiqing Luo's footsteps halted as she turned her head to look behind her. Seventh miss, Madame Yuqi. Madame Yuqi has been killed. Zhang San panted heavily, his expression unsightly as he said. This subordinate knows that Madame Yuqi is still useful to Seventh miss, so she locked Madame Yuqi in her courtyard. Tonight, this subordinate and Zhang Si will watch over Madame Yuqi's dean together. But, Zhang San turned his head away in shame, with a look that he found it hard to speak. Zhang Si gritted his teeth. When we were on night watch, we saw a figure scuttling into Madame Yuqi's courtyard, so I immediately chased after it. But when I followed the aura and chased to the warehouse, there was no trace of that figure. And then, we heard a miserable shriek from Madame Yuqi's room. When we rushed over to Madame Yuqi's room, Zhang Si lowered his head as he clenched his fists tightly. Madame Yuqi was killed with one stab and there were no traces of the murderer at the scene. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Madame Yuqi died just like that? Moreover, he was killed under the watch of Zhang San and Zhang Si? She was very clear about Zhang San and Zhang Si's strength. They were the two leaders of the Three Springs Sex Guards. Their profound grades were all around the 7th grade of the Earth Profound Realm. Trying to kill someone right under their noses without leaving any traces behind? Could it be the people from the Godless Island again? Moreover, there could be more than one murderer. One should know that the warehouse and Madame Yuqi's bedroom were in the north and south respectively. Although it was just a courtyard, it wasn't too big. However, walking back and forth would take at least half an incense stick's time. Zhang San and Zhang Si chased him to the warehouse to search for the killer's scent. Then he heard screams coming from the bedroom. It only took a few breaths. There was no way he could do it alone. Take me there. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly as she walked towards the direction of Madame Yuqi's courtyard with a gloomy expression. She was just about to look for Madame Yuqi and ask about what happened back then. Madame Yuqi died. How could there be such a coincidence? The murderer killed Madame Yuqi, no matter what his motive was. Chapter 21-24. He walked to the gate of Madame Yuqi's yard. The guards who had already formed a circle greeted respectfully when they saw Yiqing Luo, 7th Mississippi, after Yi Fengyu inherited the Three Springs sect. Yiqing Luo was no longer the young matriarch of the Three Springs sect. Even if Yiqing Luo wasn't a descendant of the Yi family, these Three Springs sect's guards and servants had treated Yiqing Luo as the Yi family's 7th miss from the bottom of their hearts. How is it? Yiqing Luo took quick steps forward and entered the courtyard. Have you found any clues? The guards followed behind her and looked at each other. They lowered their heads and said apologetically, "We're sorry, Miss Seven. We've searched the entire courtyard and didn't find any traces left behind by the murderer." After Zhang San and Zhang Si sensed Madame Yuqi's death, they immediately left. He immediately sealed off the courtyard and arranged for the guards to thoroughly investigate the courtyard. In such a short period of time, the murderer should not have had the chance to leave the courtyard. But not a single hair of the murderer could be found in any corner of the courtyard. Either that or the murderer was still in the yard. Or the murderer's speed was so fast that he could come and go without a trace. Yiqing Luo followed Zhang San and Zhang Si to Madame Yuqi's bedroom. Before she even got close, Yiqing Luo could smell a thick stench of blood. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Zhang San pushed open the door and said in a low voice, "After bringing Madame Yuqi back to the courtyard, her body started to fester. If it wasn't for seventh young lady's pills that kept her alive, she would have died long ago. In other words, the stench of blood did not only come from the cut on Madame Yuchi's neck, but also from the wounds all over her body. Madame Yuchi was indeed miserable. On her body, there is almost not a piece of intact, almost. She was lying on the bed with a knife wound on her neck. Blood was still gushing out. Her eyes were wide open, filled with fear and unwillingness. The room was filled with the stench of rotten meat and blood. When the guards behind him saw the festering, bloody corpses, and the stench filling the air, they couldn't help but shudder in fear. They all felt nauseous. Some of the maids who followed along to join in the fun directly leaned against the wall and vomited. However, their seventh miss, with a straight face, wandered around the room. Even when his gaze was fixed on the corpse, his eyes did not blink, and his expression was calm. This courage, this determination. One had to know that seventh miss was only a 15-year-old girl. Those who didn't know better would think that their seventh young mistress was a murderous demon who spent her days on piles of corpses. Yiqing Luo wandered around the room, but didn't find any useful clues. It was indeed as Zhang San and Zhang Si had said. Other than the knife mark on Madame Yuchi's neck, the murderer did not leave any other marks that belonged to him. What was the murderer's motive? Madame Yuchi had now become neither human nor ghost. Whether she lived or died, it didn't seem to affect anyone. Moreover, it was obvious that Madame Yuchi would not live for long. Why did the murderer have to kill Madame Yuchi at this time? He knew that she wanted to ask Madame Yuchi about what happened in the past. Did he want to stop her from finding out what happened back then? Or did he have other motives? Yiqing Luo was in deep thoughts. Her ears suddenly twitched and her eyelashes trembled slightly. Her enchanting eyes, which were scanning the surroundings, slowly retracted and looked at the people behind her. You can leave first. Send someone to watch over each courtyard. If there's any situation, inform me immediately. Yiqing Luo said calmly. Chapter 21-25. Yiqing Luo looked at Zhang San and Zhang Si as well as the rest of the servants. All of you leave first, especially the two of you. Go to Matriarch's courtyard to guard and ensure Matriarch's safety. Zhang San and Zhang Si looked at each other. Seventh miss, we will leave one of us to accompany you. No need. Yiqing Luo shook her head. Even if you're here, you're not the murderer's opponent and will drag me down instead. Zhang San and Zhang Si. Although this was the truth, but there was no need to say it out so directly. The two of them decisively led the bunch of servants out. There was only Yiqing Luo left in the entire house. Yiqing Luo didn't stay in the house. She lifted her feet and walked out of Madame Yuchi's bedroom. She released her perception and sensed that the guards and servants were already in Madame Yuchi's courtyard. Yiqing Luo lightly curled her lips as she raised her head and fixed her gaze on a spot in the dark starry sky. Since you're here, why not show yourself directly? The wind blew, swirling Yiqing Luo's fine black hair. The young lady was dressed in red with jet black hair, a stunning beauty, against the reflection of the fire in the courtyard. As though she was shrouded in a layer of light. She looked like a pure and holy nine heavens fairy, like a dream. There was no response from the air. Yiqing Luo wasn't in a hurry. She maintained the posture of looking up at the starry sky. The expression on her face was tranquil and elegant. After a long time, she moved her pink lips and yawned tiredly. If you're not willing to show yourself, then I'll go back. In the middle of the night, she didn't have the energy to accompany that lunatic to admire the moon. She'd rather go back and sleep, to replenish the energy she had used today. Yiqing Luo finished her words and turned around to leave. She had just turned around when a hurricane struck her from behind. Yiqing Luo didn't avoid it. That hurricane had no murderous intent or vicious intent. Yiqing Luo smiled as she turned her head back. Finally willing to show yourself? Behind her, the man in the hurricane was surrounded by layers of airflow. The man was dressed in a crimson luxurious robe, under the agitation of the hurricane, was like a jumping flame. His figure was outstanding, and he was handsome. The red robe on his body did not reveal any demonic aura, but instead, it made the man's entire body emitted a dense coldness. That innate aura was so strong that it made people want to submit. The most eye-catching part of him was his eyes, which were filled with coldness. It was clearly bottomless, as deep as the sea. There seemed to be countless whirlpools within, attracting one's soul. However, his eyes were covered with a layer of coldness, so that when people see him, she subconsciously lowered her head, not daring to look at him. Even if it was Yiqing Luo, she was also frozen by the frost beneath his eyes. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she looked at him. Zhu Xian, long time no see. The person that had arrived was precisely Zhu Wuxin. After parting ways in the flame lair, she had not seen Zhu Wuxin again. Who would have thought that he would actually come to the West Continent, and come to the Three Springs sect to find her? Zhu Xian stared at Yiqing Luo, as though he was trying to find a trace of fluctuation from her face. However, he was still disappointed in the end. The expression on Yiqing Luo's face had a faint smile, and the gaze she used to look at him was calm and distant. You knew I was here. Zhu Xian used a declarative sentence. Yiqing Luo's reaction apparently showed that she had long guessed that the person in the dark was him. No, it's just that I smelled a familiar plum fragrance earlier. This isn't the winter season. The only person who can have such a unique feeling is you alone. Chapter 21-26. Zhu Wuxin's black eyes were fixed on her. All of a sudden, his thin lips curled into a frivolous smile, which made him look even more evil and cold. What? Now that you and Dizun are in a loving relationship, you can't bear to see me, who used to have a relationship with you? Yiqing Luo's face sunk. The one who had a relationship with you is not me. Not you. Zhu Xian slowly walked towards Yiqing Luo as he stretched out his hand and grabbed her wrist. Yiqing Luo struggled and wanted to retreat, but Zhu Wuxin's strength was too great. The more he struggled, the tighter he gripped. What do you want to do? Yiqing Luo frowned and simply stopped struggling. Zhu Wuxin pulled open her sleeve, revealing half of her arm. How do you explain the birthmark here? Zhu Wuxin's cold voice was right next to her ear. It was like an icy hand that was seeping into her heart through her eardrums. Yiqing Luo shuddered as she speedily retracted her hand. This time, Zhu Wuxin did not force her. Yiqing Luo successfully retracted her hand as she pulled down her sleeves. Zhu Xian, what are you trying to prove? Zhu Xian's smile did not diminish, but the coldness in his eyes was frightening. Only you have this birthmark. Yiqing Luo. If you're not her, then there's only one possibility. Zhu Wuxin suddenly lowered his voice, and there was a thick sense of treachery in his words. You have been possessed by a ninja. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled as her body froze. Zhu Xian slowly straightened his body as his icy cold piercing eyes stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. Then I will use all means to recover my original body, to snatch my Qing Luo back. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly as her slender brows knitted into a bundle. She absolutely believed that Zhu Wuxin was serious. If Zhu Xian confirmed that she wasn't the original Yiqing Luo, she would be determined to be the one who possessed her body. Possession, as the name suggested, was to borrow someone else's body to reincarnate. Zhu Xian wanted to restore the original Yiqing Luo to her original self. That would also mean that he had to chase her out from Yiqing Luo's body. As for Zhu Wuxin, since he would say such a thing, this also meant that Zhu Wuxin had already investigated and made preparations in this aspect. As long as he was certain that she wasn't the real Yiqing Luo, Zhu Wuxin would make a move on her. This lunatic. Yiqing Luo secretly gritted her teeth. She really didn't know how the previous Yiqing Luo, who was so delicate and weak, had provoked this lunatic. Yiqing Luo. You are the only woman that I have feelings for. I will not let you go. Zhu Xian looked at Yiqing Luo's changing expression as his lips twitched coldly. Yiqing Luo, you can't escape. The man's icy cold gaze made Yiqing Luo extremely disgusted. Her eyes flickered slightly as she took a few steps back and raised her head to look at him. Zhu Xian, whether you let go or not has nothing to do with me. If you insist on using such a ridiculous method to make yourself comfortable, To prove that the Yiqing Luo in your mind still exists, then up to you. Zhu Wuxin's cold eyes stared at her without blinking. The dense murderous aura seemed to want to engulf her. However, even after a long time, Zhu Wuxin did not make a move. Only that bone-piercing chill didn't dissipate for a long time. Yiqing Luo, long time no see. Let me give you a present. After half an incense stick of silence, Chu Wu Xian suddenly opened his mouth. Yiqing Luo's brows creased as she silently wondered what tricks Zhu Wu Xian was playing. Following that, she saw Zhu Wu Xian throwing a lump of something towards her. Chapter 21-27. It was a woman's voice. Give her a woman as a gift? Normal people really couldn't keep up with a madman's train of thought. Yiqing Luo lowered her head and looked at the sack by her feet. She lifted her leg and kicked it. The person in the sack struggled violently. Looking at Yiqing Luo's bored look, Zhu Wu Xian's gaze turned colder. Yiqing Luo, I will come and look for you again, you are my. After Zhu Wu Xian finished his words, he didn't bother about Yiqing Luo's reaction. He turned around and leaped onto the wall. Zhu Wuxin. Yiqing Luo suddenly spoke out. Zhu Wuxin's footsteps halted. Her crimson robe looked extremely beautiful under the night sky. I'll tell you one last time. You're the only one who's lost in the past. Yiqing Luo's chilly voice had no emotions at all. You and I when we were young, totally didn't know what love is. Marrying when you say you want to, marrying when you want. A marriage without any feelings can't be taken seriously. Zhu Wuxin's back was very straight. He did not look back. An ice-cold voice faintly sounded, but I took it seriously. Just as Chu Wuxin finished speaking, a voice came from outside the courtyard. Elder sister. Yi Fengyu hurriedly rushed over, and when he saw Yiqing Luo standing at the entrance of the courtyard, he quickly jogged over. His gaze was fixed on the red-clothed man standing on the wall facing the wind. Startled, he widened his eyes. My savior. Zhu Wuxin glanced sideways at Yi Fengyu. Without replying to Yi Fengyu, his figure flashed, and he turned into an afterimage, disappearing into the night. Savior, don't go. Yi Fengyu rushed forward, trying to make him stay. However, Zhu Wuxin was too fast. Yi Fengyu helplessly stood in the corner, looking in the direction in which Zhu Wuxin had disappeared. Yiqing Luo was puzzled and walked to his side. Savior? Are you talking about him? Yi Fengyu hurriedly turned back. Sister, when Yiqing Qian joined forces with the dark forces to invade Three Springs sect, it was him. He was the one who saved me and Ling. The person who saved Yi Fengyu was actually Zhu Wu Xian. She owed Zhu Wuxin another favor. Sister, do you know him? Did he come especially to find you? Yi Fengyu looked in the direction that Zhu Wu Xian had left, his face full of excitement. Yiqing Luo shook her head. He was just passing by and sent something over. Yi Fengyu's face was full of excitement. Big sister, if we meet again, you must bring me along. I want to properly thank him. If it wasn't for him, this time, I definitely wouldn't have made it. Yes. Yiqing Luo rubbed Yi Fengyu's head as she was still feeling bewildered. Zhu Wu Xian, who looked like an ice cube. How could he possibly specially save Yi Fengyu? And Ziling from Three Springs sect? Could it be Zhu Wuxin did it for her? He knew that she cared about these two people very much. So he specially saved them from Yiqing Qian's hands and specially threw them to the Mu brothers? Suddenly, a woman's groan came from the gunny sack that was struggling on the ground, interrupting the conversation between the siblings. Yiqing Luo lifted her leg and kicked the sack, raising her eyebrows. Xiaoyu, open the sack and see what's inside. Yi Fengyu squatted down and opened the gunny sack. Under Yiqing Luo's instructions, he pinched the bottom of the gunny sack and threw the person inside, head first onto the ground. A dong sound was heard. A slender lady dropped out from the gunny sack. The lady's head crashed heavily onto the ground. Chapter 21-28. The lady was dressed in a jade green long dress, and her clothes were in a mess. Her hair was like a chicken's nest, extremely messy as it covered her face. Moreover, Her body was stained with blood and her entire body was filled with horrifying wounds. No matter how one looked at her, she was in a sorry state. After the lady fell onto the ground, she rolled around in pain. Blood seeped out from her forehead, causing her disheveled hair to stick into a ball. Sister, this is... Yi Fengyu was shocked by the lady as he retreated a few steps towards Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo half narrowed her eyes as she sized up the lady who was lying on the ground. Her lips curled slightly as she snorted coldly. Zhu Wu Xian's gift is indeed a good one. The favor that I owe him, seems like I can't repay it off. Ah. Yi Fengyu looked at Yi Qingluo in a daze, not understanding the meaning behind her words. Yi Qingluo patted his head as she slowly walked towards the lady who was struggling and rolling on the ground. She looked down at that lady from a high position. Miss Feng, long time no see. The lady's struggling and rolling action instantly came to a halt. Suddenly, the lady abruptly raised her head and through that messy hair, Yi Qingluo could clearly see a pair of murderous eyes. Woo, woo woo, woo woo woo. The lady cried out angrily. Her body was fluctuating along with her emotions as it kept shaking. Yi Qingluo's brows rose as she totally didn't mind the lady's irritable emotions. She was still looking down from a high position, as though the lady was an ant beneath her feet. She smiled as her slender fingers caressed her lower jaw. Miss Feng is really pitiful. You were once so high up but now you have fallen into such a state. I wonder how Xian would feel if he saw you in such a state. She mentioned the two words, Xian. The lady's resentment and viciousness became more and more obvious. The lady's struggles became more and more intense. The lady's cries became more and more anxious and furious. However, Yi Qingluo stooped down again as she tilted her head and gave a chilly smile. I've forgotten that the only woman who can see my Xian is only me. Even if you're in such a disheveled state, my Xian wouldn't have any feelings at all. Yi Qingluo's expression turned cold as she looked at Yi Qingluo. Ugh. The woman's eyes widened and her cries became even more ferocious. Yi Qingluo stretched out her hand and brushed aside the lady's hair which was covering her face in disgust. The woman's face was reflected in his eyes. Yi Fengyu pointed at the woman in shock. Feng Ling. Wasn't this woman the granddaughter of the Imperial Palace's granny? The one who was now wanted by the headquarters and the entire Nirvana realm was chasing after her? It was actually her. Yi Qingluo pulled out the smelly cloth from Feng Ling's mouth. Yi Qingluo, you slut. Let go of me. Let me go. As soon as Feng Ling could speak, she started cursing. She no longer had the fairy-like temperament that she had in the past. Feng Ling hated Yi Qingluo. He hated Yi Qingluo so much that he couldn't wait to tear her into pieces. Yi Qingluo had snatched away her most beloved brother Di. Yi Qingluo had caused her to turn from the high and mighty Feng Ling into a wanted criminal. Now, no matter where she went, they had to hide and not appear in front of everyone. She was like a gloomy mouse. All these were thanks to Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo half squatted down. Her long and narrow eyes curved into a bloodthirsty smile. Feng Ling, Madame Yuqi. You killed her, am I right? Chapter 21-29. Yi Qingluo's eyes sunk. Feng Ling really hated her. Seeing that she didn't want to kill Madame Yuqi, he thought that she didn't want Madame Yuqi to die. So in order to target her, he killed Madame Yuqi? How ridiculous. If she didn't want Feng Ling to die, was Feng Ling going to commit suicide to target her? Yi Qingluo really couldn't understand this dumb woman's train of thought. Yi Qingluo scoffed lightly. Then I should thank you for helping me settle my enemy, and even protecting my reputation. You. Wind Chimes gritted her teeth and roared. You're using me? Yi Qingluo clicked her tongue. Who asked you to be so stupid? Madame Yuqi is after all the Yi family's second concubine. If I were to kill her, wouldn't I bear the infamy of killing an elder? This assassination of yours has actually resolved the problem in my heart. Feng Ling was so angry that her whole body trembled. She raised her hand and pointed fiercely at Yi Qingluo as she bellowed furiously. Yi Qingluo, aren't you trying to force me to meet you on my own accord by asking the headquarters to issue a wanted order? I'm telling you, You'll never be able to obtain the heart tranquility pearl. Yiqing Luo smiled. Do you think you still have the right to speak now? Yiqing Luo smiled and walked closer to Fengling. Fengling was frightened and wanted to retreat. However, the injuries all over her body left her without any strength. He could only look at Yiqing Luo with an aghast expression, as she closed in step by step. Zhu Wuxing gave you to me as a gift. Do you think that you still have a chance to escape? Yiqing Luo lifted her chin and gave a look of disdain. Fengling, actually I admire you. You actually hid for so long and didn't come to see me, and even made yourself into such a state. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she smiled brilliantly. You used to be so bright and beautiful, but now you're covered in a stench. Bitch. You slut. Fengling stomped her feet in anger, frantically trying to shake off Yiqing Luo's hand. Fengling was infuriated. Yiqing Luo's words had poked the most painful part of her heart. Her features were malevolent as she crazily opened her mouth, trying to bite Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo suddenly released her lower jaw. Fengling had used too much strength. Without Yiqing Luo's support, he fell onto the ground and fell flat on his face. The bleeding on his forehead, which he had just managed to stop with great difficulty, broke his skin again. Fengling grimaced in pain, and her eyes were filled with hatred. Yiqing Luo straightened her body and stepped on the back of Fengling's hand, which was propped up on the ground. She bent over and narrowed her eyes, which reflected a cold light. Miss Feng, you know very well that in my heart, you can't even be considered as trash. If it wasn't for the fact that you have something that I want, I wouldn't even need to talk so much nonsense with you. Yiqing Luo laughed softly. I'm someone who doesn't like trouble. Either you give me the thing obediently, or I'll kill you and find the tranquil bead. If it wasn't for the little bit of relationship between Dmo Xian and the Imperial Palace's old granny, she would have killed Fengling long ago. This Fengling had repeatedly played tricks behind her back to create trouble for her. The last time at the Dark Forces main camp, this woman even dared to make use of Dmo Xian to agitate her, and even hurt her. If not for the profound Heart Jade's protective consciousness, she probably wouldn't be able to hang on. Bitch. Kill me if you have the ability. I'll see how you're going to find the tranquil bead after you kill me. Fengling sneered without a single bit of fear. Did you think that I would be so silly to keep the tranquil bead on me? If you kill me, the whereabouts of the tranquil bead will forever be a secret. Chapter 2130. Yiqing Luo stepped on the back of Fengling's hand with increasing force. That ravishing face was blooming with a brilliant smile, as though the person who was stepping on Fengling's hand wasn't her. Why? You can't bear to do it? Fengling stared at her mockingly. You know the importance of the tranquility pearl to you, so you don't dare to kill me, afraid that you can't get it, right? As she said that, she laughed to herself. The expression on her face was filled with viciousness and madness. Yiqing Luo, I've said this before, if you want to get the tranquility pearl, exchange it with Brother D. As long as you return Brother D to me, this tranquility pearl is yours. Fengling's sinister eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Miss Feng, you're a wanted criminal in the Nirvana realm. In this world, other than your grandmother, there's absolutely no one else who would help you. Yiqing Luo bent down, and the force she used to step on Fengling's hand increased. Fengling grimaced in pain, but she didn't want to lose to Yiqing Luo, so she didn't make a sound. Yiqing Luo pretended not to notice Fengling's pain as her lips curled up, and the weight of her body pressed down on her feet. She smiled lightly. Because of this, you won't believe anyone and you won't believe that any place is absolutely safe. Tranquility Pearl. Such an important thing, used to threaten me. How could you not bring it with you? You. Yiqing Luo smiled as she shook her head and interrupted Fengling. Fengling, don't be in a hurry to deny it. I'm too confident in my own conjecture, and can't wait to verify whether my conjecture is right or not. Her words paused as the smile on her lips became treacherous and bloodthirsty. Why don't I kill you now and turn over your internal organs, even your profound jade heart and heart, to see if I can find the tranquility pearl? When she finished her words, the smile enlarged in Fengling's eyes. Fengling, Are you interested in helping me to test my conjecture? Feng Ling even forgot to cry out in pain as her eyes widened in disbelief, her eyes filled with shock. Feng Ling's face was filled with shock as her petite body trembled uncontrollably. The gaze she used to look at Yiqing Luo was filled with fear. This kind of woman. This kind of deranged, cruel and bloodthirsty monster. Why did Brother D like her? Apart from the fact that her face could also seduce men. What was so good about her? She was a monster. Windling's pupils shrank and her breathing quickened. Feng Ling knew Yiqing Luo's character. Yiqing Luo said she wanted to rummage through her internal organs. Then she must be serious. Fear, the emotion of fear, continued to spread in his heart. Windling shrank back in fear. He did not care about the scars all over his body. Calming pearl. I'll give you the calming pearl. Feng Ling's terrified voice trembled. But, you have to promise me that you'll let me leave safely. I've always hated trouble. Yiqing Luo touched her chin and shook her head decisively. Wind Chime's pupils shrank even more. I promise. I promise I won't cause trouble for you. Let me go, let me go. He looked at the woman who was begging him. On Yiqing Luo's face, there wasn't the slightest bit of change. Wind Chime's promise could not be trusted. But thinking of Dmo Xian, thinking of the scene of him and the imperial palace's old granny going against each other. She finally closed her eyes as she heaved a long sigh and said, Take out the calming pearl. Windling's eyes lit up with joy as she immediately flipped her palm and placed it on her forehead. A burst of profound energy spread out from Windling's palm. Chapter 2131. Yiqing Luo smirked as she raised her eyebrows and stared at Feng Ling's forehead. Feng Ling had actually hidden the tranquility bead in her own mental energy. As expected of a world spiritist, his spirit power was so powerful. If it was her, there was absolutely no way for her to hide things in her mental power. She did not have such a strong spiritual power. Her spiritual power couldn't handle anything else. After Feng Ling took out the calming bead, she was so weak that she seemed to have no strength at all. She spread out her palm towards Yiqing Luo, said Heart Pearl. Yiqing Luo's finger moved slightly. The gourd flame fan unfurled and drew out a profound wave. The tranquil pearl immediately fell into Yiqing Luo's palm. Yiqing Luo's eyelids drooped as she pinched the crystal clear little bead and looked at it carefully. The tranquility bead was extremely cold. It was like a small piece of ice covering her palm. I've already given you the item now. Can I leave? Feng Ling used all her strength to growl. Her malevolent face and vicious eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Yes. You want to go back on your word? Feng Ling's face was filled with terror. Yiqing Luo, you promised me. Yiqing Luo maintained her enigmatic smile and didn't say a word. In reality, he was already calling out to Old Man Song in his heart, inquiring about the authenticity of this heart-calming bead. Yiqing Luo placed the tranquility pearl on the cherry blossom pattern on her arm. Old Man Song sensed it and said with certainty, This heart-calming bead is real, and it doesn't hide any other power. The last time when Yiqing Luo was schemed against by the dark forces, she placed the profound heart jade which contained profound yin qi into her body. Old Man Song used 120% of his attention to examine anything that came from the outside. Deeply afraid that the situation of Yiqing Luo being controlled by Lao AI would happen once again. Yiqing Luo nodded her head. At least Wind Chimes knew her place. Her gaze swept past Feng Ling, who was curled up on the ground and shivering. Feng Ling met her gaze and cried out anxiously, Yiqing Luo, I've already given you the calming orb. I won't bother you or Brother D anymore. I just want to live. She cried like a pear blossom in the rain. The cry for help was trembling. She kept choking with sobs. Windling continued to cry and beg for mercy. Yiqing Luo raised her hand to stop Feng Ling from making any noise. All right, you may leave. Sister. Yi Fengyu frowned in disapproval. Letting Feng Ling go was definitely not a good thing for his sister. Yiqing Luo shook her head at him. Yi Fengyu could only purse his lips and say no more. When Feng Ling heard this, her eyes lit up and she was wild with joy. Really? Then I'm leaving. Windling got up from the ground in a hurry. Her body was riddled with scars, and she couldn't muster any strength at all. But the thought that Yiqing Luo was still looking at her. Feng Ling gritted her teeth and took a deep breath, concentrating all of her profound energy on her feet. Then he flew out of the Three Springs sect residence at lightning speed. Ah! Suddenly, a shrill scream came from the horizon. Feng Ling, who had just used her breath to rush up the wall, flew back and crashed heavily into Madame Yuchi's bedroom. Feng Ling screamed in pain. His entire body was nearly smashed into pieces by this fall. Yiqing Luo, you! How dare you lie to me? Feng Ling was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Her facial features were sinister as she stared in front. But the moment she opened her eyes, she met with a pair of eyes that were filled with disbelief and hatred, and blood dripping onto her face. Chapter 2132. The tentacle was a sticky substance. It was blood. It was also a hand of rotten flesh. Feng Ling was unable to suppress the fear in her heart as she screamed in terror. What she pushed earlier was Madame Yuchi's corpse. It was Madame Yuchi's corpse. Feng Ling's smash earlier had accurately smashed onto Madame Yuchi's bed. Madame Yuchi's festering skin, coupled with the knife wound on her throat, was extremely horrifying. This scene almost drove Feng Ling crazy. Her hands were filled with fresh blood and Madame Yuchi's rotten flesh. Feng Ling only felt her stomach churning. Yiqing Luo, who was standing at the door, got a shock. She looked at Feng Ling, who was screaming crazily on Madame Yuchi's bed. She looked at the direction of the energy which attacked Feng Ling earlier. Before she had time to think deeply, an extremely familiar scent of sandalwood assaulted his nostrils. Instantly, it filled Yiqing Luo's nose. Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly widened, overflowing with uncontrollable joy. Her waist was tightly wrapped by a strong and powerful arm, as though it wanted to merge into her body, hugging her tightly. Xian! Yiqing Luo's heart was thumping wildly. It was Xian. Her Xian was back. The man's elegant sandalwood scent, and the man's hormone scent, surrounded Yiqing Luo's body. His deep hoarse voice, like a mellow wine, sweet and charming. Luo, I missed you. Just a few simple words made Yiqing Luo's heart soften suddenly. Her arms wrapped around his waist tightly, rubbing her little face on his chest. I missed you too. Thinking about it, they were only separated for a few days. But in just a few days, they already missed each other to the bone. Why are you back? Have you settled the Imperial Palace's matter? Yiqing Luo raised her head, gazing deeply at the man in front of her. After not seeing him for a long time, he was still that peerless, dignified and noble. His forehead was still dripping with a thin layer of sweat. A few strands of black hair, scattered in front of his forehead, stuck by the sweat. It added a trace of evil charm to his beauty. Diemo Xian lowered his head, kissing her hard on her lips, settled. His kiss wasn't considered gentle, but it made her body tremble as if she had been electrocuted. Her little hands unconsciously clenched the front of Diemo Xian's clothes. Miss him. Miss her. This kiss conveyed the longing of the two people. Then wind chimes' furious shouts came from Madame Yuchi's room. Big Brother D. Brother D, it's you. The two of them kissed each other until they couldn't separate from each other. Diemo Xian greedily stared at the charming face in front of him, as if inviting him to continue. His body tensed up. A ball of nameless flame surged towards the direction where he was squeezed 3 inches down. How could Yiqing Luo not understand the yearning in the man's eyes? She rolled her eyes and pushed Diemo Xian away. This beast was really thinking about that matter all the time. Stop fooling around. Feng Ling is still there. She was not that hardcore to do a live broadcast in front of others. Diemo Xian gave her another 2 ferocious pecks before releasing her. Then he shifted his gaze to the woman in the room. It was just a momentary change. Diemo Xian's gaze was cold. The flame on his entire body, at this moment, was like an ice mountain, covering him. Feng Ling's heart was in pain. All of a sudden, she thought of a sentence. Her big brother D wasn't warm. It was just that the person he wanted to be warm to was not her. Her lips trembled slightly, and after some time she found her voice. Brother D, earlier it was you who stopped me. Chapter 2133. As long as Diemo Xian said no, she would believe him unconditionally. Feng Ling's hopeful gaze stared unblinkingly at Diemo Xian. His face was so handsome that it took her breath away. She couldn't hide her love for him. His face moved her heart. Any factors that could harm Lil Luo must be eliminated. Diemo Xian said indifferently. This answer also admitted that the person who attacked Feng Ling just now was him. Diemo Xian hugged Yiqing Luo as he looked at Feng Ling calmly, without a single trace of emotion in his eyes. Feng Ling, this lord has said this before. This lord has put up with it on account of grandma's face, but time and time again you want to put Lil Luo to death. He paused and enunciated each word icily. So anything that threatens Lil Luo, that hurts Lil Luo, this lord will personally shatter. Feng Ling's face instantly turned as pale as paper. She widened her eyes in disbelief, tears gushing out of her eyes as she shook her head frantically. I don't believe it. Brother D, I don't believe it. You're my brother D. Brother D wouldn't want my life for another woman. Diemo Xian looked at the tearful Feng Ling indifferently. He did not show the slightest bit of emotion. Feng Ling, I'll hang your head at the entrance of the Wind Emperor Palace. After Feng Ling and Imperial Palace's old granny made a move on Yiqing Luo time and time again. In the Imperial Palace, Granny and Winchim took advantage of his absence to disperse most of the Imperial Palace's forces and built their own palace, establishing the Wind Imperial Palace. Their friendship had long since been severed. Feng Ling stared at Diemo Xian in shock. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Yiqing Luo, whom she viewed as her enemy, let her off. Brother D, whom she regarded as her lover and who was loyal to her, wanted to kill her. How ironic was this? Feng Ling's despairing gaze did not evoke a trace of sympathy or pity from Diemo Xian. Diemo Xian glanced sideways. The flames on his body and the contours of his face had softened. His thin lips curled up as he said warmly, Lil Luo, wait for me at the door. It will be done in a while. Yiqing Luo grabbed Diemo Xian's sleeve. Xian, no. She knew that Diemo Xian was doing all this for her. However, she valued Diemo Xian, just like how Diemo Xian valued her, and was willing to go against his own elders for her. She did not wish for Diemo Xian to make a decision that he would regret in the future. Lil Luo, wait for me obediently. Diemo Xian bowed his head, sealing her words. When his lips parted from hers, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. Madame Yuqi's door suddenly closed. Before her eyes, Diemo Xian's figure had already disappeared. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched tightly as she bit her lower lip lightly, looking at the tightly shut door. She sighed softly. Xian was really going to give up the past. If it was her, could she give up everything for Xian? Yiqing Luo's long eyelashes trembled slightly. Even she herself was unable to answer this question. Xian really loved her. To be able to meet and fall in love with Xian in this life was her greatest fortune. In the room, Windling was still begging for mercy. With a sobbing tone, she expressed her feelings towards Diemo Xian. But it was still unable to stop Diemo Xian's advance. Windling's heart was like dead ashes as her hatred and jealousy towards Yiqing Luo soared at this instance. Brother D, don't tell me. Don't tell me you really have the heart to do this to little Ling? Don't tell me you really don't care about Grandma's feelings? Windling sobbed softly. Chapter 2134. Diemo Xian looked at Feng Ling calmly. There wasn't a trace of emotion in his deep obsidian black eyes. That was a whirlpool covered with frost. Even if one was sucked in, they would die without a burial ground, but it still made one want to sink into the brilliance. Feng Ling's heart felt as though it was gripped tightly by a cold hand. She stared at Diemo Xian's face in a daze. Tears rolled down from the corner of her eyes. Her pitiful look couldn't move the man in front of her. After a few breaths, Diemo Xian walked to the bedside. Feng Ling looked at him with love and hate. Her pale lips were trembling. She clutched the blanket tightly. She didn't care that the blanket was covered with Madame Yuchi's blood. Fengling understood Dmo Xian's character very well. No one could change the things that Dmo Xian had decided on. If Dmo Xian wanted to kill her, in that case he would really kill her. Fengling raised her head and looked at the godlike man. Her lips trembled as she asked, "Brother Di, before I die, I only want to know one thing. From the beginning to the end, did you ever have a place for Xiaoling in your heart?" Dmo Xian stopped in his tracks. His icy cold gaze swept past Fengling's face emotionlessly. His thin lips moved slightly as he said word by word, "Never." Fengling's pupils contracted as she laughed bitterly. Tears blurred her eyes. She shut her eyes in despair as she laughed bitterly. "You kill me. To die in Brother D's hands, it's considered fulfilling one of my dreams." Dmo Xian raised his hand as profound energy gathered in his palm. In his heart, the only thing that could stay was Yiqing Luo. You could say that he was heartless or cold-hearted. He would never exert a shred of affection on unimportant people. Fengling could clearly sense that powerful, profound energy. Her tears started to flow more violently. She thought that she would show weakness and show her feelings like this. On account of their past relationship, Dmo Xian would at least spare her life. But she said so much. But it still couldn't make Dmo Xian waver. Was his heart really made of stone? Fengling really wanted to dig out his heart to see how hard his heart was. The surging profound energy came crashing down. Wind Chime's heart leaped into her throat. He wanted to resist, but he was powerless. He could only close his eyes and wait for death to come. Suddenly, Fengling did not feel the tearing pain that she had been waiting for. Instead, she felt her body lighten. She was dragged into an embrace by some unknown force. Fengling opened her eyes in delight. "Brother D." Before he could finish, the smile on Windling's face froze. "Little Ling." The old voice was extremely dignified. His sinister, wrinkled face was filled with anger. Fengling's heart skipped a beat. Tears kept gushing out. She suddenly leaned forward and cried bitterly, "Grandma, Grandma." The anger on the Imperial Palace's grandma's face finally subsided after hearing her granddaughter's cries. She lifted her withered hand and gently patted Fengling's back. She blamed her granddaughter for getting herself into such a state for a man. But at the same time he felt sorry for his granddaughter. Listening to Fengling's cries, the heart of the Imperial Palace's granny also tightened. The Imperial Palace's granny clenched her teeth as she raised her sinister cold eyes and stared at the man in front of her. Dmo Xian's palm strike earlier landed on thin air. The entire bed was blasted into smithereens. It could be seen that Dmo Xian's palm strike earlier was totally merciless. He really wanted to kill Fengling. Dmo Xian. Chapter 2135. Dmo Xian's deep eyes were cold and stern. "Grandma, long time no see. Do you still have me in your heart?" The Imperial Palace's grandma was furious. Dmo Xian looked at her calmly. "This lord has yet to congratulate Grandma for becoming the Wind Emperor's grandma and taking charge of your own Wind Emperor Palace. You, Granny of the Imperial Palace. No, she should be called Granny Wind Empress now." Granny Fengdi stared fiercely at Dmo Xian as the fury in her heart made her eyes red. "Dmo Xian, Granny has protected you for so many years. I'd not expected that. For a woman, you actually treat Granny like this. Good. Good. Grandma has raised an ingrate." Granny Wind Emperor's chi and blood surged. After shouting this, he couldn't help but cough violently. Dmo Xian remained expressionless. There was not a trace of emotion in his eyes. "Ah Xian." Outside the door, Yiqing Luo heard the commotion in the house. He also heard his grandmother's furious curses. Yiqing Luo immediately pushed open the door and rushed in. As expected, he saw Granny Wind Emperor carrying Fengling in her arms, standing face to face with Dmo Xian. "Little vixen, how dare you appear in front of me?" The minute Granny Wind Emperor saw Yiqing Luo, all the suppressed anger in her chest exploded at this instance. Granny Wind Emperor let out a furious roar. Around Granny Wind Emperor's body, countless surging and thick profound energies surged. One after another, it blotted out the sky and covered the earth as it slammed down towards Yiqing Luo's direction. How dare you? Dmo Xian's eyes turned cold as he rebuked in a low voice. The purple sleeves were like rolling clouds, stirring up all the surrounding air currents. Bang, bang, bang. A deafening collision sound rang out. Madame Yuqi's bedroom was blasted apart by the two powerful dark forces. Yiqing Luo's delicate body was brought into Dmo Xian's embrace. He waved his sleeve again. The profound energy released by Granny Wind Monarch was easily suppressed. Granny Wind Emperor dodged in time, so she wasn't hurt by her own profound energy. Dmo Xian. Granny Wind Emperor's face was gloomy. Her malicious eyes were filled with a biting cold sharpness. Dmo Xian shielded Yiqing Luo behind him. The frost on his face was so thick that ice shards could fall off. That pair of deep ink-like eyes were dark and gloomy, and they were bone-chilling. It was as if his eyes had just swept past them. He would fall into an endless ice cellar. Even Granny Wind Emperor couldn't help but feel shocked. The last time in the blazing flame nest, Dmo Xian had already shown mercy. But that time, even if she had shown mercy, she could clearly feel the disparity between her and Dmo Xian. What she relied on. It was just that Dmo Xian had once been taken care of by her in Nirvana realm for a few months. Dmo Xian didn't care about this. Then Granny Wind Emperor shivered, and did not dare to continue thinking about it. With this lord around, whoever dares to lay a hand on little Luo, or will be making an enemy out of this lord. Dmo Xian looked at Granny Wind Emperor coldly. His icy cold gaze was extremely oppressive. Granny Wind Emperor's face turned pale. She hugged Fengling tightly. Her eyes flashed and she suddenly stepped back. Then his figure flashed and he was about to leave. Dmo Xian's eyes turned sharp as he gave off a burst of murderous aura. Trying to hurt little Luo and still dare to run? He let go of Yiqing Luo and the wind under his feet chased after her. His palm wind was about to land on Granny Wind Emperor, blocking the both of them. Suddenly, a burst of powerful black energy descended from the sky, blocking in front of Granny Wind Emperor. Dmo Xian's palm landed on that black energy. Immediately following that, an indistinct, unreal figure appeared in that ball of black energy. Chapter 2136. The moment that shadow appeared. Granny Wind Monarch carried Fengling as she took the opportunity to escape. Dmo Xian wanted to chase after her, but was entangled by that ball of black energy once again. Dmo Xian's brows creased tightly as he looked at the direction where Granny Wind Monarch's figure disappeared. He waved his sleeves impatiently as he split apart the black energy. This time, the black energy didn't continue to tangle with Dmo Xian. Instead, it gathered towards the direction of that blurry shadow in the void. The more it gathered, the fainter that shadow became. Dmo Xian's expression instantly sunk. This thing, why did it feel like? Could it be? Dmo Xian's heart suddenly tightened. Nirvana realm looked like it was getting more and more chaotic. Did the people from the upper realm really think that God realm no longer existed? The black energy slowly dissipated in mid-air. Along with that blurry shadow, it also disappeared. Yiqing Luo looked at the direction where that shadow disappeared in shock, as she felt extremely astonished. There was actually something that could block Dmo Xian's palm. Furthermore, it was able to tangle with Dmo Xian, and successfully escape. That thing, what on earth was it? And that shadow? What on earth was it? Yiqing Luo was filled with puzzlement as she looked at Dmo Xian. She instantly threw it to the back of her mind. Side profile kill. Because of the battle between Dmo Xian and Granny Wind Monarch, as well as that black energy, the pitch-black sky kept on flashing with lightning, tearing a huge hole. Lightning lit up as it shone on Dmo Xian. That tall and straight figure, his purple luxurious robe seemed to be plated with a layer of light. It showed his nobility and elegance. Perhaps Dmo Xian was deep in thought. That peerless handsome face, his side profile was extremely cold, giving off a suffocating sense of oppression. Tightly pursed thin lips, the lip lines were alluring, as though inviting her to come forward to have a taste. Hence, Yiqing Luo's mind was filled with a man's charms. Amen, he had no moral principles. He had no bottom line. In front of a beauty, everything could be thrown away. Xian. Yi Qingluo rushed forward and hugged Demo Xian's waist. Oh, my man is so handsome, so handsome. The young lady's sweet voice was filled with love and possessiveness, successfully pleasing Demo Xian. He turned around and wrapped an arm around her soft body. Yi Qingluo cooperated as her arms circled around his neck, her charming eyes sparkling. Tiptoeing, Yi Qingluo's pink lips pressed onto Demo Xian's. She kissed him on the lips and sucked on his lips like how he usually did to her. That sentence, "You hurt Lil Luo. And you still want to run," was enough to make Sue explode. After Yi Qingluo sucked on it, she moved her head away and leaned towards his shoulder. Oh, my maiden's heart has swelled up. Xian, how can you be so handsome? The other party was Granny Wind Empress. Demo Xian had repeatedly laid his hands on Granny Wind Emperor for her. This is also using action to show. In the future, when she met Granny Wind Emperor and her granddaughter again, she didn't need to show any mercy at all. Ever since the founding of the Wind Emperor Palace, the so-called friendship between them had long since vanished into thin air. This man, the way he was always thinking about her, was so handsome. Since I'm so handsome, would you be satisfied with just a kiss? Demo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as he looked at the young lady's sparkling, adoring gaze. His heart became extremely soft. He suppressed his magnetic voice as he panted with a trace of emotion. Lil Luo, or just a kiss, are you really satisfied? He circled Yi Qingluo's waist tightly as his large palm directly clasped onto the back of Yi Qingluo's head. Chapter 2137. The young lady's face was flushed red, like a budding flower. The same tender, sparkling red lips seemed to be tempting to approach. The man's scorching temperature scorched Yi Qingluo's body. Her eyelashes fluttered as she realized something, trying to break free from his hand and avert her gaze. But the man's strength was too strong. How could she break free? The back of her head was firmly fixed in the man's broad palm. Yi Qingluo's cheeks turned even redder. The man's pheromones enveloped her in an overwhelming manner. Yi Qingluo's fingers unconsciously curled up, clutching the collar in front of his chest. Her delicate body softly fell into Demo Xian's arms. You torturous little demoness, you only know how to seduce me. Yi Qingluo bit her lips, staring at him. Only when this man's gaze locked onto her, her entire body went soft, panting heavily, her heart beating rapidly. This man was really poisonous. He was a demoness who made her want, but not able. I'm only seducing you. Demo Xian's large palm held her face. Following that, he kissed her deeply. His actions were gentle, bit by bit, guiding her to respond. A soft peace licked open her trembling pink lips. His low hoarse voice bewitchingly came from her lips. Lil Luo, is there anything important tomorrow? Yi Qingluo was unable to control her tender panting and moaning. Hearing Demo Xian's words, Yi Qingluo's petite body trembled violently. How could she not understand the meaning of his words? Her fingers tightened again, as her charming eyes were filled with a layer of mist, revealing a hint of wetness. Evildoer. Stinky evildoer. Lil Luo. Or if you don't answer, it means that you've tacitly agreed. There's nothing tomorrow, Demo Xian laughed softly beside her ear. His slightly trembling body, an extremely hard texture, rubbed against her petite body. Right now, she was already ignited by the man. She was extremely sensitive and could feel the toughness of his body, especially the man's ending tone, the last completely made her body limp and powerless. She forcefully held on, as her fingers grabbed his clothes tightly, raising her misty eyes, staring at him. On her lips was his saliva. Demo Xian, you're dead meat tonight. She forcefully pulled his body towards her. Go back to my room. Demo Xian's deep inky eyes flickered with a red gleam. Two thin lips kissed her forcefully. His hands encircled her tightly. Yi Qingluo only felt a cold breeze on her cheek. Before he could react, her body was already pressed down to the ground. It was a soft bed and a familiar scent. This is her room. Looking at the peerless face on his body, he felt a chill run down his spine. Yiqing Luo's fingers tugged hard as she forcefully kissed his lips. "See how I deal with you." The next day, when Yiqing Luo woke up, it was already noon. She felt sore all over and stretched lazily. He struggled to get up from the bedding. The next moment, her body, along with the bedding, was encircled into the man's warm embrace. "Little Luo, good morning." A man's hoarse voice rang in her ears. Yiqing Luo lazily closed her eyes and leaned her weight on the man. "Ah Xian, it's all your fault. I'm almost drained by you." Dmo Xian laughed out loud. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes were flowing with amorous ripples. He whispered, "Yes, it's my fault. So as punishment, I have to help you wash up and change your clothes. Xiao Yu and the rest are waiting for you." Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly opened. That's right. She had forgotten. Xiao Yu had just inherited the position of Three Springs Sect's patriarch yesterday. Three Springs Sect had to be reorganized once again, and Yi Fengru's matter had yet to be confirmed. Chapter 2138. By the time Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian reached the main hall, it was already 1 hour later. Stepping into the hall, Yiqing Luo surveyed the surroundings of the hall. Yi Fengyu was sitting in the main seat. Behind Yi Fengyu stood Yi Fengru, who was dressed in a simple yet elegant robe. His head was lowered, and his thoughts were blank. Ziling stood beside him. The lower seats on the right side of the hall were occupied by the sect elders. He did not see the figure of the old ancestor. When the two of them entered, Yi Fengyu stood up and wanted to welcome them. Before he could walk down from the main seat, he saw Yiqing Luo leaning lazily on Dmo Xian's shoulder. Yawning as she walked to the soft chair by the side to sit down, Yi Fengyu halted his steps. Although he was still young, with the status of the Yi family, he had long known about this matter. Even if you haven't eaten pork, you've seen a pig run. In the past, the students in the academy were all only 13 or 14 years old, and they all had several servant girls who served as servants. After such a long time, Yi Fengyu more or less understood some things. Seeing Yiqing Luo in this state, appearing in the main hall, everyone knew what had happened last night. Dmo Xian hugged Yiqing Luo and sat down on the two-seater soft chair. Yi Fengyu then regained his senses and hurriedly stood up to greet Dmo Xian. "Dmo Xian, brother-in-law." The others also stood up and bowed towards Dmo Xian. "We pay our respects to the overlord." Yi Fengyu's voice overlapped with everyone else's. When the sect's elders saw Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian walking hand in hand into the main hall, his heart leapt up to his throat. When she heard how Yi Fengyu addressed Dmo Xian, his old face instantly turned pale. Dizun, brother-in-law, the overlord, and Yiqing Luo. What kind of relationship? Although he had heard that the overlord had spent the night in Yiqing Luo's courtyard, he had also heard that Yi Fengyu had asked Ziling to summon Yiqing Luo several times, but was always blocked by the overlord. A man and a woman, alone in a room at night. The next day, the woman fell into a deep sleep. As someone who had lived for hundreds of years, how could he not guess what had happened last night? But, in the hearts of the sect elders, Dizun was high and mighty. He was a legendary figure. Compared to Yiqing Luo, that kind of 15-year-old yellow-haired little lass who hadn't even fully grown her hair, at most. She could only play around. After all, Yiqing Luo's face was indeed a source of calamity. He also had the capital to bring calamity to the country and the people. However, when she heard Yi Fengyu call her brother-in-law, she felt a chill run down her spine. The elders of the sect panicked. We're all a family, no need for formalities. Dmo Xian said indifferently. Yi Fengyu's lips curled into a smile. He returned to his seat and sat down again. His face was filled with joy from seeing his sister and brother-in-law's good relationship. Big sister, actually, after knowing that brother-in-law has come, I didn't want to disturb you, but I've just inherited the position of sect master, and there are many things in the sect that haven't been resolved yet. The sect elders insisted that I consult you. In front of Yiqing Luo, Yi Fengyu behaved like a normal child. His eyes were filled with dependence towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo yawned lazily and casually swept a glance at the sweating sect elders. Since the sect elders have come out of seclusion, and little Yu is still young and inexperienced, the sect elders are the only elders of the sect, and the living signboard of Three Springs sect. Little Yu has just inherited the position. The sect elders should be helping him by the side, isn't it? Chapter 2139. 7th Mrs. Wright. I am the only elder of Three Springs sect. I have the obligation to help the patriarch grow. The sect elder replied while wiping his sweat with trepidation. Yi Qing Luo nodded in satisfaction and glanced at Yi Fengru. Second young master, since you are standing here now, then I will take it as you have chosen the future you want. The man who was mentioned suddenly tensed up. He raised his head and looked at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Fengru, who had experienced many changes, was no longer the same as before. That handsome face that had always been gentle and refined had been replaced by a cold and expressionless face. His eyes were as calm as still water, as if there was no ripple in his heart. Only when he looked at Yi Qing Luo, there was a trace of fluctuation in his eyes. Yi Qing Luo lazily shifted her body and found a comfortable position in Dmo Xian's embrace. Immediately, she picked up the teacup by the side. Yi Fengru, since you've already made your choice, I'll give you this chance. Steam curled up from the teacup. It made her beautiful face look hazy and mysterious. She took a sip of the tea. The fragrance was rich. She closed her eyes in satisfaction and continued. Remember, you no longer have the next Baiming clan. I will use my life to save you. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly froze. The cold light eroded everything around. Yi Qing Luo closed her eyes and could clearly feel the chill coming from Yi Fengru. She raised her eyebrows and opened her eyes. Dmo Xian had taken away the teacup from her fingertips and put it back on the coffee table. His slender fingers grasped her hand. The warm interaction was not affected by Yi Fengru at all. Second brother. Yi Fengyu felt the atmosphere was oppressive and quickly turned to look at Yi Fengru, calling out with a smile. At the same time when Yi Fengyu called out second brother, Yi Fengru's cold eyes blinked. In that instant, the cold light emanating from his body disappeared without a trace. All the arrogance was restrained. Yi Fengru clenched his hands and took a step back, standing behind Yi Fengyu. Yi Fengyu heaved a sigh of relief, raised a smile and looked at Yi Qing Luo. Elder sister, second brother he. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and stopped his pleading. Yi Fengyu was close to Yi Qing Luo and also revered her. Immediately, he lowered his head and did not dare to speak again. Yi Fengru. Yi Qing Luo's sweet voice was devoid of any emotion. Yi Fengru clasped his hands together respectfully. I didn't mention the Baiming clan because I wanted to poke at your scars. Yi Qing Luo sat up slightly and looked at him seriously. I only want to tell you one thing. Bei Mingshi used her own life to exchange for a chance for you to live on properly. If you really care about Bei Mingshi, then for her, along with her share, live on together. Yi Qing Luo's expression turned serious as she looked at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Fengru's pupils constricted, and the veins on his clenched fists bulged. Yi Qing Luo replied calmly. If your current submission is because you secretly have some thoughts that you shouldn't have, then don't blame me for disregarding the Baiming clan's relationship and sending you down to meet the Baiming clan. After a pause, she lowered her voice and sounded a little ethereal. Don't waste the chance that the Baiming clan fought for you. Yi Fengru's body tensed up. The fists hanging by his sides were almost embedded deep into his bones. Yi Qing Luo didn't speak again. Yi Fengru didn't give any response. The atmosphere in the entire hall seemed to have sunk into a low pressure. The few of them felt that even breathing had become difficult. Chapter 2140. After some time, Yi Fengru, who had been tensed up, as though he was suppressing something, slowly moved. His body in that instance relaxed. Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed past an undetectable smile. The next moment, Yi Fengru knelt down towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. I will abide by my mother's dying wish. To live for 7th Mississippi. His voice wasn't loud, but it was sonorous and filled with determination. A pair of eyes which had no desires, was still like water, making one unable to distinguish clearly. What he said, was it true or false? Yi Fengru looked at Yi Qingluo without blinking, as he spat out every single word clearly. My mother said my future is to live for 7th Mississippi. But by 7th Miss side, there's the world group, devil class, and also from various continents famous and promising experts, and he paused, as his gaze swept past Dmo Xian, and back to Yi Qingluo. There's also the Overlord to protect you. You actually don't need my presence by your side. I know you value Sect Master very much, and also treat Sect Master as your own brother, and dote on him. So I choose to stay in Three Springs Sect, to assist Sect Master. Second brother. Yi Fengyu abruptly stood up, as he bent over to support Yi Fengru. Yi Fengru shook his head as he looked at Yi Qingluo stubbornly. 7th Miss can choose not to believe me, but I think me staying in Three Springs Sect is the result you want. No. Yi Qingluo lightly curled her lips, as her sleeves moved, an invisible airflow struck towards Yi Fengru's legs. Yi Fengru's body was lifted up, as he slowly stood up. Yi Fengyu immediately supported him. I believe you. Yi Qingluo looked at Yi Fengru calmly. I can feel the relationship between you and your mother very clearly, and I believe that you will help me protect Xiaoyu for your mother. Yi Fengru's eyes lit up, as though he couldn't believe that Yi Qingluo actually believed him. In his pupils, there seemed to be a dazzling luster, faintly floating. His heart also calmed down. He bowed his waist towards Yi Qingluo's direction, and following that he retreated back to his original position. Yi Fengyu looked at Yi Fengru's respectful demeanor, neither servile nor overbearing. His thin lips moved as if he wanted to say something. But Yi Qingluo opened her mouth and called out to him. Little you, with Yi Fengru's help and the guidance of the sect's elders, the reorganization of Three Springs Sect will not be a problem. Yes. Yi Fengyu nodded and looked at Yi Qingluo. But sister, if I inherit Three Springs Sect, the Heavenly Academy, I will discuss this matter with the Academy. Master Guiyu is your master. If he is willing, he can come to Three Springs Sect to personally guide you when the Academy has no classes. Yi Qingluo had considered this point before. A sect could not be without a leader for even a day. If Yi Fengyu went to the Black Academy for lessons, he could only come back for 3 days a month. Yi Fengyu's ability had improved rapidly in recent times. But his aptitude hasn't been completely activated yet, so he can't compare with the two brothers of the Mu family. Naturally, they couldn't be like the Mu brothers, who could go to the academy whenever they wanted, and busy themselves at home whenever they wanted to be busy. The only way was, let Master Guiyu come to teach. Master Guiyu was only teaching the devil class. Long Yunjian and the rest were watching over the devil class. If Master Guiyu was willing, he could spare 1 to 4 hours a day, and that would be enough. Chapter 2141. The matters in the West Continent have stabilized. The Heavenly Academy should be gathering the students to return soon. Yi Qingluo calculated the time. I will have a good talk with Master Guiyu. Yes. Yi Fengyu nodded excitedly. He was already very proud and happy to be the disciple of Master Guiyu. If Master Guiyu could give him special treatment, he would be so excited that he could fly to the sky. Yi Qingluo's body softened as she leaned back into Dmo Xian's arms. She glanced at the sect elder. With Yi Fengru and the elder around, there is no need to specially come to me for the Three Springs Sect's matters. You can decide for yourselves. After all, it was a fact that she was not a member of the Yi family. If there were people from the Three Springs sect, she would handle it herself. She would try not to interfere if she could. People would always change. Even she would change according to the environment. The current Xiaoyu was full of trust and dependence on her. But most of the time, she would not be by his side. No one knew what the future would bring. If she interfered too much in Three Springs sex matters, in the future, there would be people who would constantly brainwash Xiaoyu. Perhaps 1 person would wash, 2 people would wash, 3 people would wash. Xiaoyu would not believe it. But When 100 people, 1,000 people, or even 10,000 people stood in front of him, telling him that everything Yiqing Luo did was to get Three Springs sect, to use him to control Three Springs sect, and so on and so forth. At that time, could Xiao Yu's heart still hold on? The future was unpredictable. The only thing she could do was to prevent all these from happening. She would try her best to ignore the Three Springs sect's matters. In the past few years, Yi Fengru had been the butler of the Yi family's backyard, and was able to cultivate a group of his own forces without anyone noticing. It was enough to prove that Yi Fengru was courageous and intelligent. With Yi Fengru as his advisor, Yi Fengyu definitely wouldn't take too many detours. In addition, there was the sect elder, an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years, a sky mystic overlord. If they wanted to attack the Three Springs sect while the successor to the throne was a young man, then they would have to be prepared to be annihilated. Today Dmo Xian showed his face. Even if the sect elders felt indignant, even so he had to swallow it. Is there anything else? Yiqing Luo smiled faintly. Yi Fengyu scratched the back of his head as he glanced at Dmo Xian, and was about to open his mouth. Behind her, Ziling, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said, "Miss, you're leaving the Three Springs sect again, right?" Hearing the little lass's aggrieved voice, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh. She looked at Ziling and said with a smile, "Ling, you have recovered well and your talent is not bad. If you cultivate well, you will definitely have your own world in the Nirvana realm in the future. But Ling only wants to stay by Miss' side." Ling life was saved by young Miss. Ling legs were healed by young Miss. And everything Ling has today was bestowed by young Miss. Ling wants to accompany young Miss, protect young Miss, protect young Miss. Ziling's eyes were misty with tears, and her voice carried a hint of sobbing. Ever since Yiqing Luo could cultivate, the time she spent with Yiqing Luo was getting lesser and lesser. Especially after Yiqing Luo went to the Heavenly Academy. Yiqing Luo seemed to have forgotten about her. Now young Miss had gone further and further away. Chapter 2142. Yiqing Luo looked at the weeping Ziling. Yiqing Luo smiled helplessly. "Ling, did you understand what Yi Fengru said just now?" Ziling blinked her tearful eyes and looked at Yiqing Luo blankly. "What second young master said just now?" "He said there were too many powerful people around Mississippi. She didn't need someone like him around her. Even second young master wasn't qualified to stay by her side. Then wouldn't she be even less qualified to follow Miss?" Yiqing Luo looked at Ziling's expression and became more and more depressed. Yiqing Luo knew that this girl was thinking the wrong way. She patted the hand that was playing with her hair around her waist. Dmo Xian let go of her obediently. She got up and walked to Ziling. He raised his hand and gently caressed Ziling's head. "Silly Ling what I mean is you should choose to stay in the Three Springs sect like Yi Fengru and protect little you for me." Ling understands. "I understand." Ziling's cheeks subconsciously blushed as she watched her miss approach. Her eyes widened and almost greedily looked at Miss's beautiful face. She didn't know how long it had been since she saw Miss up close. As she got closer, the young Miss's charm, which made people submit to her, came pressing down on them in an overwhelming manner. "Don't worry about me. If you want to repay me, then take good care of little you for me." Yiqing Luo lowered her head and deliberately got closer to Ziling unexpectedly. Her flirting skills were quite good. She hadn't even flirted much. The little girl's face turned red. Just when Yiqing Luo was ready to continue to flirt with this girl, suddenly, a clear and cold voice called out quietly from behind him. "Little Luo." Yiqing Luo felt a chill down her spine. She stood up straight. The hand that was around Ziling's shoulder slowly moved down. Then step by step she stepped back. Bang! Her back was knocked into a hard embrace. Yiqing Luo hugged his arm and lowered her voice. "Don't tell me you're jealous of a little girl?" Dmo Xian lowered his head and leaned over her shoulder. "What do you think? All right, you're the prettiest. Who asked me to love beauties the most?" Yiqing Luo took a deep breath, turned around and threw herself into Dmo Xian's arms. All right, if there's nothing else, carry me back to the room to catch up on my sleep. I'm so sleepy. Dmo Xian helplessly looked at the coquettish young lady in his arms, his eyes filled with indulgence. He wrapped his arms around the girl's waist and carefully lifted her up. Yi Qingluo's arms wrapped around his neck as she nestled in his arms and closed her eyes. Dmo Xian turned and walked towards the door. Wait. Brother-in-law, wait. Yi Fengyu hurriedly got up from his seat and rushed to Dmo Xian's side. Dmo Xian's footsteps halted as he turned around and looked at him. Yi Fengyu raised his head and coincidentally met with Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes. Startled, he took a few steps back. Black eyes, black hair, a face of peerless elegance. Just by standing there quietly, he exuded a majestic aura. That domineering aura, that demonic charm, was like a poppy, extremely dangerous but made people involuntarily sink into it. Even though he knew that Dmo Xian's brother-in-law was his brother-in-law. On account of his sister's face, he would never make a move against him. But in the face of such a powerful Dmo Xian, Yi Fengyu, this child, would still feel fear. Chapter 2143. However, no matter how gentle Dmo Xian was, those who couldn't withstand his aura, nor could she feel his gentleness. Yi Fengyu fiercely swallowed a mouthful of saliva, took a deep breath and said in a trembling voice, That, brother-in-law, I have a question to ask you. When he finished his words, he seemed to be afraid that Dmo Xian would be angry and immediately pointed at Yi Qingluo. Regarding sister's matter, Yi Qingluo stretched out her hand and grabbed Dmo Xian's face. Her little body shifted in his embrace and she propped herself up in his arms face to face with him. Her hands pinched both sides of Dmo Xian's cheeks as she tilted her head, revealing a brilliant smile. Ah Xian, don't scare little you, give me a smile. Dmo Xian was rather helpless. He was already trying his best to suppress his aura. However, Yi Fengyu's mental fortitude was too weak. What could he do? He was also in despair. That brat Yi Fengyu, who was sitting on the main seat and looking at him, was still fine. Why was he behaving like this when he was right in front of him? Could it be that his future brother-in-law was deliberately making things difficult for him? He looked at his sister, who was constantly rubbing Dizun's face with her hands. And Dizun had a doting look on his face. Yi Fengyu felt like he had been fed a mouthful of dog food. Look at how much Dizun's brother-in-law dotes on his sister. What was there to be afraid of? Dizun's brother-in-law was obviously a henpecked husband. Therefore Yi Fengyu closed his eyes, steeled his heart, and roared out the words that he had been suppressing in his heart for a long time. Brother-in-law Dizun, when do you plan to become my real brother-in-law? All was silent. The entire hall fell into a deathly silence. Yi Qingluo's hand, which was pinching Dmo Xian's face, froze. She looked at Yi Fengyu in shock, not understanding why he would ask such a question. Dmo Xian was stunned for a moment, and lowered his eyes to look at the young lady in his arms. His answer depended on her attitude. But when he saw the shock in the young girl's eyes, it was as if she had never thought of this problem before. Dmo Xian's heart was indescribably upset. He tightened his arms and increased the strength of his arms. On the surface, he still maintained a gentle smile. Little you, why do you ask? Yi Qingluo nodded her head repeatedly as she stared at him with wide eyes. Right. Why would he ask that? Was little you urging them to get married? Yi Fengyu watched the two of them respond to this question. The atmosphere was obviously strange. His little heart couldn't stop beating wildly. Did I ask the wrong question? Not waiting for Yi Fengyu to reply, Dmo Xian raised his brows. Dmo Xian replied with an N. Yi Fengyu was so shocked that he jumped back a few steps. I just wanted to ask you and my sister, that your relationship is so close. My sister is a woman after all. After all, if she doesn't get married, her reputation, he stuttered and spoke incoherently. But Dmo Xian understood the meaning behind his words. Yi Qingluo's heart warmed. This brat was worried about her and concerned about her reputation. Although this place was a foreign world that had never appeared in history, It was still a foreign world. But it was still ancient times after all. Reputation was extremely important to a woman. Yi Qingluo and Dmo Xian's relationship had been spread around the entire Nirvana realm. If the both of them didn't get married and this was spread out, Yi Qingluo would definitely be pointed at by others. Chapter 2144. Following Yi Fengyu's words. Yi Qingluo's heart involuntarily pounded along with the rhythm of Yi Fengyu's words. Instinctively, she raised her head and fixed her gaze on the man who was hugging her. From this angle, Yi Qingluo could clearly see Dmo Xian's expression. His rosy red lips were slightly raised, and his long and narrow peach blossom eyes were slightly raised. Clearly he was in a good mood. Yi Qingluo's little hand tightened on Dmo Xian's collar. He could feel the thundering heartbeat of the girl in his arms, and the hand that was grabbing his chest unconsciously curled up. Dmo Xian's lips curled up even more. Was his little Luo heir nervous? Previously, because Lil Luo had never thought of marrying him, the unhappiness he felt suddenly disappeared in that instant. His heart suddenly soared. He tightened his arms around the girl in his embrace. Her peach blossom eyes gazed deeply at Yi Fengyu. His deep brows were slightly raised. Dizun brother-in-law. Yi Fengyu was frightened by his gaze and stammered in a low voice. His heart was beating faster and faster, as if it was about to jump out of his throat. Clearly, Dizun's brother-in-law looked very gentle. She also didn't show any displeasure because of his forced marriage. But why did he feel weak at the knees when he looked into his brother-in-law's eyes? He wanted to escape from the range of his gaze. Little Yu wants this lord to marry little Luo. Dmo Xian's thin lips curled upwards, his voice gentle. However, the atmosphere in the hall was so stiff that it was difficult to breathe. Yi Fengyu's body stiffened and trembled slightly. Obviously under Dmo Xian's aura field, she couldn't even stand firm. But he still stubbornly stood his ground, trying his best to raise his head, to look at Dmo Xian. Ziling carefully hid behind Yi Fengyu and hugged his arm. She whispered, "Young master, Miss and the Overlord must have their own thoughts on this matter." Oui. Yi Fengyu shook his head at Ziling, his eyes filled with determination. "This concerns my sister's reputation and future. No matter what, I must get to the bottom of this." Looking at the determined look on his young master's face, Ziling had no choice but to shut her mouth. The sect elders at the side were so scared that their calves were trembling uncontrollably. He clasped his hands together and racked his brain, trying to think of a way to stop Yi Fengyu's forced marriage. Was this the new sect leader or the new ancestor? The Overlord did not answer for a long time. Obviously, he had never thought of marrying Miss Qi. It was highly possible that the Overlord was just messing around with Miss Qi. If the new sect master's forced marriage behavior angered Dizun, what about the Three Springs sect? How could the new sect master be so blind? The few of them were perturbed. His heart was about to jump out of his chest. Dmo Xian folded his arms and lowered his eyes to look at the young lady who was staring at him in a daze. The infatuation in the young girl's eyes pleased Dmo Xian. The corner of his mouth unconsciously curled up. In that instant, his entire aura was softened. After a long while, Dmo Xian raised his eyes. His face was magnificent, and his eyebrows were thick and deep. His peach blossom eyes flickered with a brilliant light. Yi Fengyu's heart tightened. His hands that were clenched tightly by his sides were clenched tightly. "Little Yu, you should ask your sister about this." Dmo Xian lowered his eyes and gazed deeply at the person in his arms. Anyone with eyes would be able to see the emotions in his eyes. Huh. Yi Fengyu was confused. Chapter 2145. Yi Fengyu's eyes widened. Ziling's eyes sparkled with tears of joy and excitement. The sect elder beside him was astonished. Then he took a deep breath. Sister. Yi Fengyu came back to his senses and immediately stared at Yi Qingluo. "You heard what Overlord brother-in-law said. As long as you are willing, brother-in-law will marry you immediately. What are you waiting for?" Why did she feel that she was also being forced to marry? "Sister, What are you waiting for? Hurry and tell brother-in-law that you are willing to marry him. Yi Fengyu saw that Yi Qingluo was still silent and hurriedly grabbed her wrist. Cough. Cough cough. Yi Qingluo was stunned by Yi Fengyu's anxious expression. She hurriedly raised her hand and patted the back of his hand. Xiaoyu, marriage is not something that can be achieved just because you say so. Sister, aren't you anxious? Yi Fengyu held Yi Qingluo's hand tightly. You and brother-in-law are. He blushed and looked away shyly. If sister has brother-in-law's child in your stomach, what should we do? Isn't it better to get married earlier, and have a legitimate reason for it? You stupid child. Who taught you to say all these? How would Yi Qingluo not understand what he was referring to when he didn't say it out? Her eyes widened and raised her hand to knock on Yi Fengyu's head. There's still a child. You already make me worry enough. I don't intend to give birth to another child to make me worry. Yi Qingluo rolled her eyes. That indifferent tone made Dmo Xian's eyes suddenly turn cold. The flame around him gradually subsided. Yi Qingluo continued. Don't let your imagination run wild. Your brother-in-law and I will get married sooner or later. As for the child, it will not happen for the time being. As for you, don't worry about this kind of thing. Just take care of Three Springs sect, and be my most solid support. That's enough. The low pressure created by a certain man disappeared at this moment. A certain man's face revealed a proud and joyful smile. Look, his Lil Luo said it herself that they would get married sooner or later. Sooner or later. That meant that Lil Luo agreed to marry him. Look, his Lil Luo heir said, your brother-in-law. Your brother-in-law so naturally. It was obvious that she had long regarded him as her husband and husband. That was why she acted so naturally. A certain man was so happy that his tail was almost up to the sky. The sect elder beside him saw the change in Dmo Xian's expression. Bit by bit, the shock eroded his heart. The Overlord's love for Seventh Miss. The Overlord's mood was completely influenced by Miss Seven. The elders of the sect clenched their fists. He must properly assist the new sect master, and not have any crooked thoughts. No matter what, they could never offend the Overlord. All right, little you, be a good boy and follow your second brother and the elders to learn how to manage the Three Springs sect. Your brother-in-law and I will return to our courtyard to rest. Yi Qingluo raised her wrist and hooked her finger at Yi Fengyu. Yi Fengyu pouted unhappily and took a step back. Sister, I'm already the sect master. You can't always be like this. Yi Qingluo nestled lazily in Dmo Xian's arms. Her little finger hooked again as she said in a sweet voice, You're the sect master. That means you're my brother. Oh. All right, this reason was very good and powerful. He had no words to refute. Chapter 2146. Yi Qingluo's palm touched Yi Fengyu's head. She smiled complacently, like a cat who had stolen a fish, and rubbed his head fiercely. Yi Qingluo only stopped in satisfaction when she saw her brother's meticulously combed hair was messed up. Xian, let's go. Yi Qingluo retracted her hand, circled Dmo Xian's neck, and leaned her head on his shoulder. His scent filled her nostrils. Yi Qingluo closed her eyes in satisfaction. Yi Fengyu's soft grumbling was still in her ears. Looking at the scene of the siblings getting along, Dmo Xian shook his head helplessly. Little you, study hard. As long as you can improve to the extent that your sister is satisfied, brother-in-law will give you a rare weapon. Yi Fengyu's eyes lit up. Brother-in-law, really? Really? Will brother-in-law lie to you? Dmo Xian responded in a rare good temper. Yi Fengyu was ecstatic and couldn't help but clap and shout. After Dmo Xian carried Yi Qingluo out of the hall, Yi Qingluo could still hear the burst of surprised cheers in the hall. This child is really just a child. Yi Qingluo looked at him teasingly. I think you can save this rare weapon. You have no confidence in him? Dmo Xian's steps were steady, to avoid shaking the person in his arms. He wants to protect you and become your backing, then he will definitely be able to do it. Yi Qingluo used the strength of his neck to straighten her back. Her face and Dmo Xian's face were facing each other. A pair of cunning fox-like charming eyes, flashed with a strange teasing light. I say, Xian, you are the dignified overlord, noble and elegant, respected by the world, like a legendary existence. You actually spent so much effort to encourage a human with a little bit of talent in the lower realm. Yiqing Luo giggled. Don't tell me, is it because little you called brother-in-law? The smile on Dmo Xian's face froze. His deep inky eyes shifted away unnaturally. Yiqing Luo's smile widened. Both hands held Dmo Xian's face, not letting him look away. Her bright eyes sparkled like colored glass. She smiled warmly. I was right, wasn't I? The man's face was forced to be unable to move away. He frowned and pursed his lips. Stop fooling around. Aren't you tired? Go back to the room and rest. Yiqing Luo's smile was bright and beautiful as she swept a glance at the surrounding maids and servants. She threw herself into Dmo Xian's arms. Oh, you're embarrassed? How could Dmo Xian not see through the young lady's playful thoughts? His large palm firmly supported the girl's waist, preventing her from falling out of his arms. Before he could answer, the girl suddenly hugged his head with her hands. So what if you're seen? Everyone in the Nirvana realm knows that you're my man. The girl's elegant voice was filled with pride. She snorted and bumped her head against his forehead. Xian, I know that you like me so much. You always want to marry me. Dmo Xian left her forehead and held Yiqing Luo tightly. He then freed one hand to rub her forehead. I want to marry you, are you surprised? The man's slender fingers gently caressed her head, the place where her head bumped against his forehead. Yiqing Luo smiled. Not surprised, I've long seen through your soul, and saw your deep love for me. Chapter 2147. Their shadows were projected on the ground. The tall figure leaned over, covering the petite figure of the young lady. Their shadows overlapped, as if they were glued together. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. After exchanging glances with Dmo Xian for a few breaths, she was the first to admit defeat and averted her gaze. Her little hand touched her face and found that it was boiling hot. She pursed her pink lips tightly and snorted softly. I'm telling you, don't think of cheating marriage now. Cheating marriage? Dmo Xian raised his brows, leaned close to her ear and breathed out teasingly. I really wish I could cheat you to stay by my side and not let you leave for even a moment. Hey you, what are you doing? After being tormented by Dmo Xian last night, Yiqing Luo's body was extremely sensitive. Under the warm breath, her delicate body couldn't help but tremble slightly. Her slender and fair fingers unconsciously clenched the collar of his shirt. This man, exuding the male pheromones again, tempting her to commit a crime. I'm talking to you about serious matters, don't be so frivolous. Yiqing Luo lowered her head to avoid his teasing. I'm already in pain last night, don't even think of touching me today. Hearing that she was in pain, Dmo Xian immediately moved his thin lips away and looked at her nervously. Is it painful? Let me take a look back in the room. If it's painful, you must apply medicine. Take a look back in the room? Apply medicine? Who did he learn this skill of acting like a hoodlum from? Didn't he feel ashamed to say such words? Yiqing Luo pinched Dmo Xian's waist fiercely. If you continue to talk nonsense, I'll ignore you. The young lady in his arms blushed. Her eyes were full of resentment, charming and charming. Dmo Xian looked at the spot where he had been squeezed 3 inches down, and a flame sprang up again. He held back his thin lips and pulled a smile, bent his head close to her ear and laughed softly. Didn't you say it's painful? Why did it become me talking nonsense again? You. Yiqing Luo was furious, facing a shameless man. How could she talk back? Dmo Xian carried her and strode towards Yiqing Luo's courtyard. All right, since you're not feeling well, go back to your room and rest for a few days. The academy did not urge you. Rest at home for a few days. I won't touch you. Yiqing Luo snorted coldly. She leaned her head against his chest. Dmo Xian's brows were tinged with smiles as his footsteps became gentler. Lil Luo. What Xiao Yu said earlier actually makes sense. Our relationship now is no different from that of a marriage. It's better to get married as soon as possible. You're still talking. Yiqing Luo's little head arched against his chest. Dmo Xian continued to persuade. If you have a child and we're not married yet, wouldn't it affect the child's reputation? What child? Xiao Yu is spouting nonsense over there, and you are spouting nonsense too. Yiqing Luo raised her head and stared at him. We're so close. It's only a matter of time before we have kids, isn't it? Dmo Xian halted his footsteps as he lifted her chin. His peach blossom eyes narrowed as he said unhappily, "Don't tell me that you've never thought about our child?" Yiqing Luo turned red. She wanted to struggle, but her strength was not as good as Dmo Xian's. She could only blush as she muttered, "Getting married is just a formality. Between us. There's no need for the so-called formality. Didn't we agree earlier? I will wait until I'm able to keep pace with you. Then I'll marry you." After saying this, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but feel puzzled. In modern times, weren't all men unwilling to get married, thinking that it was just a formality? And to a woman, the wedding was the most important thing in her life. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.